They called her worthless, defective, a stain on the bloodline. Tonight, under the harvest moon, Alara Voss would learn exactly how little in Omega's life meant to the Iron Ridge Pack. Her future alpha, the man who'd promised her forever just 3 months ago, stood before the gathered wolves with disgust carved into every line of his face. I, Marcus Thorne, heir to Iron Ridge, formally reject you, Alara Voss, as my mate and future Luna. The bond snapped like a frozen branch, and Alara hit her knees, gasping. But this was only the beginning of a story that would reshape the Wolf Kingdoms forever. If you want to see how a rejected Omega becomes the most powerful queen in history, stay until the end. Drop a like and comment which city you're watching from. The rejection ceremony took place in the heart of Iron Ridge territory, where ancient stone pillars marked the sacred gathering ground. Hundreds of wolves formed a circle around the raised platform, their eyes gleaming in the firelight. Some wore expressions of pity. Most showed only cold satisfaction. Alara had known this moment was coming. She'd felt Marcus pulling away for weeks, felt the way he flinched when she touched him, saw the disgust he could no longer hide. But knowing and experiencing were vastly different things. The pain of a severed mate bond was legendary, a tearing sensation that began in the chest and radiated outward until every nerve ending screamed. Alara had heard stories. None of them came close to the reality. "Get up," Marcus commanded, his voice carrying easily over the silent crowd. "You shame yourself further with this display." Alara pressed her palms against the cold stone, forcing herself upright despite the trembling in her limbs. She would not grovel. She would not beg. If they wanted to see her broken, they would be disappointed. Marcus stood tall and proud in his ceremonial leathers, every inch the alpha heir he'd been born to be. At 24, he was already feared and respected throughout the Northern Territories. Broad-shouldered, sharp-featured, with eyes like chips of amber ice, he looked like power incarnate. 3 months ago, those eyes had looked at her with something approaching tenderness. "You know why this must be done," Marcus continued, addressing the crowd as much as Alara. "An alpha's mate must be strong, must be capable of bearing strong pups, of standing beside him in battle, of commanding respect from the pack." He turned his full attention to Alara, and she forced herself to meet his gaze. "You are none of those things. You are weak. Your wolf is weak. In 3 years, you haven't produced a single heir. The pack healers have examined you and found you deficient." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some sympathetic, most triumphant. Alara's nails bit into her palms. The healers had found nothing wrong with her. She knew that. Marcus knew that. But the lie served his purpose, and in the world of wolves, an alpha's word was law. "I won't deny it," Alara said, and satisfaction flashed across Marcus's face. "I am Omega. I've never pretended to be anything else, but I've served this pack faithfully. You've been a burden," Marcus cut her off. "A weak link that endangers us all. The council has voted. The decision is unanimous." Alpha Thorne stepped forward then, Marcus's father, the current pack leader. He was an older, harder version of his son, with silver streaking his dark hair and scars crisscrossing his weathered face. "Alara Voss," he intoned formally, "you are hereby stripped of pack status. You are no longer under Iron Ridge protection. You have until dawn to leave our territory. If you are found within our borders after sunrise, you will be treated as a rogue and hunted accordingly." The words fell like hammer blows. Stripped of pack status. No longer protected. Hunted. For a wolf, belonging to a pack was everything. It was identity, security, family. To be cast out was to become nothing. A lone wolf adrift in a world that showed no mercy to the weak and solitary. "You can't do this," Alara whispered, then hated herself for the desperation in her voice. "I have nowhere to go. No family outside the pack. I'll die out there alone." "Then die," Marcus said simply. "It would be a mercy compared to the weakness you'd pass to any offspring." Something inside Alara cracked. Not the bond. That was already destroyed. This was something deeper. Something that had been bending under the weight of constant scorn and dismissal for years. She'd tried so hard to be what they wanted, to be strong enough, fast enough, worthy enough. She'd trained until her muscles screamed, studied pack law until her eyes burned, volunteered for every dangerous patrol and thankless task, all to prove she deserved her place, and it had never been enough. I see, Alara said quietly. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin. Then I'll go, but hear me now, Marcus Thorne, Alpha Heir of Iron Ridge. The formality of her words made him pause, eyebrows lifting slightly. You reject me because I'm weak, because I'm Omega, because I can't give you the powerful heirs you crave. Alara's voice grew stronger with each word. But strength isn't just about how hard you can hit, or how loudly you can roar. Real strength is choosing compassion when the world demands cruelty. It's standing up when everyone expects you to stay down. She turned slowly, meeting the eyes of the pack members who'd once called her sister, friend, family. You all stand here and watch this happen. You allow an innocent to be cast out because her wolf isn't dominant enough, because she didn't produce pups fast enough, because she doesn't fit your narrow definition of worthy, and you call yourselves honorable. Silence! Alpha Thorne's command cracked like a whip. You dare lecture us? You, who brought shame to our bloodline? I brought nothing but loyalty, Alara shot back. But I'm done trying to earn acceptance from wolves who see only what they want to see. I'll leave your territory, gladly. And if I die out there in the wilderness, at least I'll die free of this place and these people who mistake cruelty for strength. The silence that followed was absolute. No one had expected defiance from the meek Omega, certainly not eloquent, passionate defiance that cut to the heart of the pack's hypocrisy. Marcus's face darkened. You'll regret those words when you're freezing and starving in the wild, when rogues find you, when you're begging the moon for mercy that won't come. Maybe, Alara agreed, or maybe I'll find something better than this. Anything would be better than this. She turned and walked toward the edge of the gathering ground. The crowd parted before her, wolves stepping back as if she carried a plague. Their faces blurred together, disgust, pity, relief, satisfaction. Not a single expression of protest or support. She'd lived among these people for 22 years. She'd grown up playing with their pups, training with their warriors, celebrating their victories and mourning their losses, and not one of them spoke up for her now. The realization should have hurt. Instead, Alara felt only a strange, hollow numbness. Alara. The voice was soft, almost too quiet to hear. Alara paused and turned. Her mother stood at the edge of the crowd, her face pale and drawn. Lydia Voss had been a strong wolf once, but years of living as a low-ranking member of the pack had worn her down to a shadow of her former self. Mama, Alara breathed. For a moment she thought her mother might step forward, might offer some word of comfort or support, might challenge the Alpha's decision on behalf of her daughter. Instead, Lydia dropped her gaze and turned away, disappearing into the crowd. The last fragile thread of hope in Alara's chest snapped clean through. Enough of this spectacle, Alpha Thorne declared. Someone escort her to collect her belongings. She leaves within the hour. Two warriors stepped forward, both males Alara had trained with in her youth. They wouldn't meet her eyes as they flanked her, guiding her away from the gathering ground toward the small cabin she'd shared with Marcus these past 3 years. The walk through the pack village was a gauntlet of hostile stares and whispered comments. Windows lit up as wolves came to watch the Omega's final walk of shame. Pups were pulled inside and doors locked as if rejection were contagious. I'm sorry, one of her escorts muttered. His name was Garrett, and he'd once called her friend. For what it's worth? It's worth nothing, Alara replied flatly. You're still following orders to throw me out. Garrett flinched but said nothing more. The cabin was dark and cold when they arrived. Marcus had already removed his belongings, Alara realized. He'd planned this rejection down to the last detail, ensuring nothing of his remained to be tainted by association with her. 10 minutes, the other escort, a hard-faced woman named Vera, announced. Pack light. You'll be traveling fast. Alara moved through the cabin mechanically. There wasn't much that was truly hers. Most of her possessions had been gifts from Marcus or pack-issued equipment. She took only what she'd brought to the relationship. A worn canvas pack, a sleeping roll, a few changes of clothes, a water skin, and a small knife her father had given her before he died. Her father. Alara paused, running her fingers over the knife's leather-wrapped handle. He'd been Omega too, but strong in his own way, wise and kind, respected for his knowledge of healing herbs and his ability to resolve disputes without violence. Different isn't the same as lesser, he'd told her once. Remember that, little wolf. The pack needs all kinds of strength to survive. But the pack hadn't agreed. When he'd died defending pups from a rogue attack, they'd given him a hero's funeral and then promptly forgotten everything he'd stood for. "Time's up," Vera called from the doorway. Alara shouldered her pack and walked out without looking back. The cabin had never truly felt like home anyway. They led her to the northern border of pack territory, where the forest grew thick and wild. Beyond this line of carved boundary stones lay unclaimed wilderness, dangerous territory where rogues and wild animals hunted freely. "This is as far as we go," Garrett said. He actually looked troubled, though not troubled enough to do anything about it. "Head north or east. Don't go south, that's Blood Moon territory, and they're less friendly than we are. West is the Deadlands. Nothing survives there." "Understood," Alara said. "Look, I know you're angry, but try to find a settlement. A human town, maybe. You're Omega. You can pass for human if you keep your wolf contained. It's your best chance." Alara almost laughed. Hide among humans? Suppress her wolf nature and live as half of what she was? That was their idea of mercy? "I'll take my chances in the wild," she said. Vera snorted. "You'll be dead in a week. 2 if you're lucky. Then I'll die free." Without another word, Alara crossed the boundary line. She felt it immediately, the severing of the last tenuous connection to Iron Ridge. The pack bond, already damaged by Marcus's rejection, dissolved completely. The absence was like a vacuum in her chest, an emptiness where the steady thrum of pack connection had always hummed. She was truly alone now. No pack, no mate, no family. Just Alara and the dark forest and the unknown stretching endlessly ahead. Behind her, she heard Garrett and Vera turn and leave, their footsteps fading quickly. They couldn't get away fast enough, she thought bitterly. Couldn't risk the contamination of associating with a rejected Omega. Alara stood there for a long moment, letting the reality of her situation sink in. She had no destination, no plan, no survival skills beyond basic wolf training. The odds of making it through even a single night were slim. But she'd meant what she said to Marcus. Anything was better than staying in a place that saw her as worthless. She shifted into her wolf form, feeling her bones reshape and her senses sharpen. Her wolf was small for their kind, sleek and gray rather than the massive, powerful forms of dominant pack members. She'd always been self-conscious about her size, about the way other wolves literally looked down on her. Now, alone in the forest, she realized her smaller size might actually be an advantage. She could move quietly, slip through spaces larger wolves couldn't navigate, go unnoticed where they'd be immediately spotted. Different isn't the same as lesser. Alara shook out her fur and started north, picking her way carefully through the undergrowth. The moon was high and bright, casting silver light through the canopy. In the distance, she could hear the sounds of the forest at night. Owls hunting, small animals scurrying, the whisper of wind through leaves. She walked for hours, putting as much distance between herself and Iron Ridge as possible. Her paws found a steady rhythm, and her mind drifted, processing the events of the night. Part of her wanted to rage, to howl her fury at the injustice of it all. But mostly, she just felt tired. Tired of fighting for acceptance. Tired of trying to be something she wasn't. Tired of the constant weight of disappointment and scorn. Out here, at least, there was no one to disappoint. Dawn was approaching when Alara finally stopped to rest. She'd covered significant ground, her smaller size allowing her to maintain a pace that would have exhausted a larger wolf. She found a small stream and drank deeply, then caught and ate a rabbit. Her first meal in nearly 24 hours. The rabbit was tough and gamey, but it was food she'd caught with her own skills, eaten without having to endure judging stares or whispered comments about how much an Omega should be allowed to take. She settled into the shelter of a fallen log, her body aching with exhaustion. As sleep claimed her, she thought she should feel afraid, alone, unprotected, in dangerous territory with no plan and no pack to back her up. Instead, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Peace. When Alara woke, the sun was high overhead, and the forest was alive with midday sounds. She stretched carefully, assessing her body for injuries. Everything seemed intact, though her muscles protested the unfamiliar exertion of the previous night's journey. She shifted back to human form and checked her supplies. The water skin was half empty. She had dried meat for perhaps 2 more meals if she rationed carefully. No tent, no tools beyond the knife, not exactly ideal survival equipment, but she was alive. That was more than Marcus and his pack had expected. Alara refilled her water skin from the stream and ate a small portion of the dried meat, chewing slowly to make it last. She needed to find more substantial shelter soon. Spring nights in the northern territories could still drop to freezing temperatures, and she had nothing but a thin sleeping roll for warmth. She spent the afternoon gathering materials: dry branches, moss for insulation, broad leaves that could serve as waterproofing. Her father had taught her the basics of wilderness survival, knowledge he'd learned from his own Omega father. Generations of wolves who'd had to be resourceful in ways the strong and dominant never needed to be. By late afternoon, she'd constructed a crude lean-to in a sheltered hollow between 2 large oak trees. It wouldn't withstand a serious storm, but it would keep off light rain and provide some protection from wind. As she worked, Alara found her mind settling into a strange calm. There was something almost meditative about the simple tasks of survival. Find water, find food, find shelter, repeat. No politics, no social hierarchies, no judgments. Just the basic requirements of existence. She was gathering more firewood when she heard it, a sound that made her freeze instantly, every sense sharpening to painful acuteness. A whimper. Weak, distressed, barely audible over the ambient forest noise. Alara dropped the wood and shifted, her wolf form better suited to navigating toward the sound. She moved cautiously, alert for threats. It could be a trap. Rogues sometimes used injured animals to lure lone wolves into ambushes. But the sound came again, more desperate now, and something in Alara's chest tightened with recognition. That was a pup crying. She found it in a small clearing about 50 yards from her lean-to. At first she thought her eyes were deceiving her. The pup was unlike any she'd ever seen, small, probably only a few weeks old, with fur that gleamed pure silver in the dappled sunlight. And it was dying. The pup lay on its side, breathing in shallow, rapid gasps. Its silver fur was matted with blood from numerous wounds, claw marks and bite wounds that could only have come from a vicious attack. One of its legs bent at an unnatural angle. Alara shifted back to human form and approached slowly, hands raised in a gesture of peace. The pup's eyes, an unusual pale blue, tracked her movement, but it didn't try to flee. It was too weak for that. "Shh, little one," Alara murmured, kneeling beside it. "I won't hurt you." She examined the wounds carefully. Whatever had attacked the pup had been large and powerful. These were killing strikes, meant to end a young life quickly. The fact that the pup had survived this long was remarkable, but it wouldn't survive much longer without help. Alara's mind raced. She had no medical supplies. Her knowledge of healing was limited to basic herbs and battlefield first aid. These injuries were severe, possibly beyond her ability to treat. The smart thing would be to walk away. She had enough problems of her own without taking on a dying pup. The forest was full of tragedy. She couldn't save them all. But as she looked into those pale blue eyes, so full of pain and fading hope, she knew she couldn't leave. Different isn't the same as lesser. "All right, little wolf," Alara said softly. "Let's see what we can do." She carefully lifted the pup, trying to minimize movement of the broken leg. The pup whimpered but didn't struggle. It seemed to understand she was trying to help. Carrying the injured pup, Alara made her way back to her lean-to. She laid it gently on her sleeping roll and assessed the supplies she had available. Not much. Her knife, the water skin, a flint for fire starting, some strips of cloth torn from her spare shirt. It would have to be enough. First, she needed to clean the wounds. Infection was the biggest immediate threat. She built a small fire and set the water skin near it to warm, then used her knife to cut the cloth strips into bandages. The pup watched her with those startling blue eyes, intelligent and aware in a way that seemed almost uncanny for one so young. "This is going to hurt," Alara warned, wetting a cloth with the warmed water. "I'm sorry, little one. I'm so sorry." She cleaned each wound as gently as possible, but there was no way to make it painless. The pup whined and shuddered, but didn't snap or bite. It seemed to understand she was helping, despite the pain. The broken leg was the worst problem. Alara had seen warriors set broken bones before, but she'd never done it herself. Still, If she left it untreated, the pup would never walk properly again, if it survived at all. "Forgive me," she whispered, and pulled. The snap of bone realigning made her stomach turn. The pup's cry of pain cut through her like a blade, but when it was done, the leg sat straight again. Alara quickly splinted it using straight branches and strips of cloth, working as efficiently as she could. By the time she finished, both she and the pup were shaking. "There," she said, stroking the pup's silver fur gently. "The hard part's done. Now you just need to rest and heal." But even as she said it, she could see the pup's breathing growing more labored. The blood loss and trauma were too severe. She'd done what she could, but it might not be enough. The pup's eyes began to close, its breathing slowing. "No," Alara breathed. "No, don't you dare. You survived whatever attacked you. You held on this long. Don't give up now." She pulled the pup close, cradling it against her chest, sharing her warmth. She could feel its small heart fluttering frantically, fighting to keep beating. "Live," she whispered fiercely. "Please, just live." Something stirred deep inside her, a sensation she'd never experienced before. It felt like heat and light and power all at once, pooling in her chest and radiating outward. Her hands began to glow with a soft, silvery light. Alara gasped, trying to pull away, but the light intensified. It poured from her hands into the pup's small body, wrapping them both in luminescence. The pup's breathing eased, its heart steadied, and before Alara's astonished eyes, the wounds began to close. Not scar over, not scab. Close. As if time were reversing, as if the injuries had never happened. Within moments, the pup's fur was clean and whole, its breathing deep and peaceful. Even the broken leg straightened and healed beneath the splint. The light faded, leaving Alara trembling and exhausted. The pup opened its eyes, bright, clear, fully alert, and looked at her with what could only be described as wonder. "What?" Alara breathed. "What did I just do?" The pup yipped softly and licked her hand. Its tail wagged with puppy enthusiasm, completely at odds with the near-death creature it had been minutes before. Alara sat back, her mind reeling. Healing wasn't possible. Oh, wolves healed faster than humans, sure, but not like this. Not instant, miraculous restoration of grievous wounds. This was something else, something she'd never heard of any wolf doing. What was she? Before she could process further, voices carried through the forest. Multiple wolves, moving fast, calling to each other in urgent tones. "This way! I caught the scent! The pup must be close. Find it before the alpha realizes we failed." Alara's blood ran cold. They were looking for the pup, and judging by their tone, they weren't friendly. She looked down at the silver pup, who was now happily gnawing on a corner of her sleeping roll, and made a split-second decision. "We need to go," she said, scooping up the pup in her pack. "Right now." She shifted one-handed, her wolf form emerging around the pup. She clutched carefully in her jaws. Then she ran. Behind her, the voices grew louder, more urgent. They'd found her shelter. They'd realized someone had been there, and they'd give chase. Alara ran north, deeper into the wilderness, carrying a mysteriously powerful pup and the secret of her own impossible healing ability. She'd thought leaving Iron Ridge was the end of her old life. She was beginning to realize it was only the beginning of something far stranger and more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. The forest blurred around Alara as she ran, her wolf form eating up ground with desperate speed. The silver pup hung secure in her jaws, surprisingly calm despite the violent motion. Its small body radiated an unusual warmth that spread through her chest, almost like the phantom echo of a pack bond, but different, stronger somehow, more intimate. The voices behind her grew closer, more organized. These weren't random rogues stumbling through the woods. These were trained warriors conducting a coordinated search. "Tracks here, fresh, heading north. 2 wolves. One large. One... Wait, the small one's being carried. Move, move! They can't have gone far." Alara's lungs burned as she pushed harder, weaving between trees and leaping over fallen logs. Her smaller size gave her agility the larger pursuers lacked, but they had stamina and numbers. Eventually, they'd wear her down. She needed to hide, not run. But where? The sound of rushing water reached her ears, a river, moving fast from spring melt. Dangerous to cross, but it would mask her scent. Alara angled toward the sound, her mind racing through options. Behind her, the warriors were close enough that she could hear individual voices now. Fan out! Cover all possible routes! She can't be alone. No Omega would survive out here this long without help. Forget the Omega. We need that pup. Do you understand what the Alpha will do to us if we return empty-handed? The fear in that last voice was palpable, even to Alara. Whoever these wolves served, they were terrified of disappointing him. The river appeared suddenly, a churning mass of white water cutting through the forest. It was wider than Alara had hoped and moving faster, swollen with snowmelt from the mountains. Crossing would be suicide, but staying meant capture. Alara skidded to a halt at the water's edge, her mind calculating odds and outcomes at lightning speed. The pup whimpered softly, sensing her distress. There. A warrior burst from the trees 30 yards upstream, a massive black wolf with scars across his muzzle. His eyes locked on Alara, then dropped to the silver pup in her jaws. I found them! The Omega has the prince! Prince? More wolves emerged from the forest, at least 6 that Alara could see. They formed a loose semicircle, cutting off escape routes. All of them were larger than her, built for combat. All of them looked ready to kill. The black wolf shifted to human form, a brutal-looking man with cold eyes and a commander's bearing. Put down the pup, Omega. Do it now, and we might let you live. Alara shifted as well, cradling the silver pup protectively against her chest. Up close, she could see the resemblance between the pup and these warriors. The same unusual pale blue eyes, the same sharp, aristocratic features in their bone structure. You're the ones who hurt him, she said, the pieces clicking together. You attacked a defenseless pup. We followed orders, the commander said flatly. Politics you can't begin to understand. Now give us the whelp before this gets messy. Never. The word came out hard and absolute. The commander's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. No one expected defiance from an Omega. You heal him? He asked, gesturing to the pup's unmarked silver fur. We left him with wounds that should have killed him in an hour. Yet here he is, whole and healthy. Alara said nothing, her arms tightening around the pup. Interesting. The commander took a step forward. His warriors mirrored the movement, tightening the circle. Very interesting. Perhaps the whelp isn't the only valuable thing we found today. An Omega with healing powers? The Alpha would pay well for that. I'm not going anywhere with you. You don't have a choice, girl. Look around. You're surrounded, outnumbered, and outmatched. You can't fight us all. You can't outrun us all. Your only option is surrender. He was right, and they both knew it. 6 trained warriors against 1 Omega with no combat experience. It wasn't even a contest. But Alara had already been rejected, cast out, and left to die once. She'd survived that. She'd crossed into the wilderness alone and made it this far. She'd healed an impossibly wounded pup with powers she didn't understand. She was done surrendering. You're right, Alara said. I can't fight you all. The commander smiled, sensing victory. But I don't have to. Alara turned and jumped into the raging river. The water hit like a physical blow, cold enough to stop her heart. The current seized her immediately, dragging her under and spinning her violently. She clutched the pup with everything she had, using her body to shield him from the worst impacts as rocks and debris battered them. Her lungs screamed for air, her muscles locked up from the cold. The world became a chaotic blur of white water and darkness. Then her head broke the surface, and she gasped, pulling in blessed oxygen. The pup was still there, still safe, though his eyes were wide with terror. It's okay, Alara managed to choke out. I've got you, I've got... Another wave crashed over them, and they went under again. The river carried them downstream for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Alara stopped fighting the current and focused solely on keeping their heads above water and avoiding the worst of the rocks. Finally, mercifully, the river widened and slowed. Alara kicked toward the far bank, her limbs heavy and uncoordinated from cold and exhaustion. Her feet found purchase on the rocky bottom, and she dragged herself onto shore, the pup still clutched against her chest. She collapsed onto the bank, gasping and shaking. Every muscle felt like it had been beaten with hammers. Her skin was ice cold, her lips probably blue. But they were alive, and they were across the river. The pup squirmed free and shook himself vigorously, spraying water everywhere. Then he started licking Alara's face with enthusiastic puppy affection, as if they'd just finished a fun game rather than nearly drowning. "You're insane," Alara muttered, but she couldn't help smiling slightly. "Absolutely insane. Do you know that?" The pup yipped agreement and continued his assault of puppy kisses. Alara forced herself to sit up, assessing their situation. They were on the eastern bank of the river, which meant they'd crossed out of whatever territory those warriors controlled. The sun was lowering toward the horizon, maybe 2 hours of daylight left. She was soaked, freezing, and had lost her pack in the river. No supplies, no shelter, no dry clothes or fire-starting materials. But those warriors weren't crossing that river anytime soon, not with the current running this fast. That bought her time. "Come on, little prince," Alara said, scooping up the pup. "We need to find shelter before we both freeze to death." She walked inland, every step an act of will. Her body wanted to shut down, to curl up and sleep. She forced it to keep moving. The pup whined and wriggled, clearly wanting to walk on his own. Alara set him down carefully, and he immediately started trotting beside her, his small legs working overtime to keep pace. He really was remarkably energetic for a pup who'd been at death's door just hours ago. The healing she'd somehow performed had been thorough. What exactly had she done? And how? Those questions would have to wait. Right now, survival took priority over understanding. They walked for perhaps 20 minutes before the pup suddenly stopped, his ears perking up. He let out a series of sharp yips and took off running. "Wait!" Alara called, chasing after him. "Where are you?" She nearly ran into the cave entrance. It was perfectly hidden by an overhang of rock and thick curtain of vines, nearly invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. The pup sat at the entrance, tail wagging proudly. Did you find this?" Alara asked, astonished. Another yip of confirmation. Alara approached cautiously, alert for signs of current occupation. Bears, wildcats, even other wolves might claim a cave like this. But the entrance was clear of tracks, and the air smelled only of stone and earth. She peered inside. The cave extended back about 15 feet, with a ceiling high enough to stand upright. The floor was dry and relatively flat. It was perfect. "Good boy," Alara said, scratching behind the pup's ears. "Very good boy." They entered the cave together. Alara's first priority was fire. She had no flint, but years of watching her father had taught her alternative methods. She gathered dry moss and bark from the cave's edges, then searched for the right kind of rocks. It took nearly an hour and countless failed attempts, but finally a spark caught. Alara nursed it carefully, breathing life into the tiny flame until it grew strong enough to sustain itself. Warmth. Blessed, beautiful warmth. She stripped off her soaked clothes and hung them near the fire to dry, then wrapped herself in the sleeping position of her wolf form to conserve heat. The pup immediately curled up against her belly, sharing warmth. As the fire crackled and her body slowly thawed, Alara's mind drifted back to the warrior's words. The prince, they'd called him. They'd attacked him on someone's orders, politics you can't understand. This wasn't just any pup. He was someone important, someone worth killing, and now someone worth hunting. "Who are you, little one?" Alara murmured. "What did you get us both into?" The pup, the prince, just yawned and snuggled closer. Alara knew she should be afraid, should regret her impulsive decision to save him. Those warriors would report back to their alpha, and he would send more searchers, probably stronger ones, definitely more of them. But as she looked at the small silver pup sleeping trustingly against her, she felt no regret, only a fierce, protective determination. He'd been hurt by wolves who should have protected him, cast aside and left to die, just like her. Maybe that's why saving him felt so right, because she understood exactly what it meant to be deemed worthless and discarded. "I won't let them hurt you again," Alara whispered. "I promise." The pup's ear twitched in his sleep, as if he'd heard and understood. Alara closed her eyes, exhaustion finally claiming her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Tonight, they were safe, warm, and alive. That was enough. She woke to the sound of voices. For a disoriented moment, Alara thought she was back in Iron Ridge, about to face another day of scorn and dismissal. Then reality crashed back, the cave, the river, the silver pup now awake and alert beside her. The voices came from outside. Multiple wolves, speaking in low, urgent tones. Certain she came this way? The river washed away most of the scent, but there's nowhere else she could have gone. She's somewhere in this sector. We've been searching for hours. She could be dead. The river, the cold, no supplies. The commander wants her alive, the pup too. Keep looking. Alara's blood ran cold. They'd crossed the river, or gone around it. Either way, they were close. She shifted to human form and quickly pulled on her clothes. They were still damp but wearable. The pup watched her with those unnervingly intelligent eyes, silent and still. "We need to go deeper," Alara whispered. "Stay quiet." She scooped up the pup and moved toward the back of the cave, hoping it extended further than she'd initially explored. Her eyes adjusted to the darkness, and she saw it, a narrow crack in the rock wall, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. The voices grew louder, closer. They were checking the area systematically. Alara pushed through the crack, the rough stones scraping her arms. The pup wriggled in her grasp, but stayed silent, as if he understood the danger. Beyond the crack, the cave opened into a larger chamber, and this one wasn't empty. Ancient carvings covered the walls, symbols and shapes that seemed to glow faintly with their own light. In the center of the chamber stood a raised stone platform, and on that platform, Alara's breath caught. It was a shrine of some kind. Old magic radiated from it in waves she could actually feel, prickling against her skin like static electricity. At the shrine's center lay a stone bowl filled with water that gleamed silver in the strange light. The pup squirmed free and padded toward the shrine, completely unafraid. No, wait. Alara reached for him, but he was already at the platform, standing on his hind legs to peer into the bowl. The water's surface rippled, then began to glow brighter. Images formed in its depths, visions of wolves running, fighting, dying. A great war between packs. And at the center of it all, a silver wolf, larger and more magnificent than any she'd ever seen. The pup yipped excitedly, his tail wagging. The vision shifted, showing the same silver wolf with a mate and pups of his own. A whole family of silver-furred wolves ruling over a vast territory. Then darkness sweeping across the land. The silver wolves falling one by one until only a single pup remained, hidden away, protected, waiting. Waiting for what? The vision faded. The water returned to its normal silver gleam. "What was that?" Alara breathed. Before the pup could respond, not that he could speak, voices erupted from the cave entrance. "In here! I smell fire!" "Check the back. Don't let her escape." Alara grabbed the pup and looked around frantically. There was no other exit. They were trapped. The narrow crack in the wall wouldn't hide them for long. Once the warriors squeezed through, there'd be nowhere to run. Her hand brushed against the stone bowl as she backed away, and power surged up her arm like lightning. The shrine activated. Light exploded from the ancient symbols, flooding the chamber with silver radiance. The power that had been dormant for who knew how long roared to life, responding to her touch. No, not just her touch. Her and the pup's combined presence. The warriors burst through the crack, weapons drawn. 5 of them, led by the scarred commander from the river. "There you—" He stopped, staring at the activated shrine in shock. "That's impossible. That shrine has been dead for centuries. How did you—" "Stay back," Alara commanded, and was shocked by the authority in her own voice. The commander actually hesitated. His warriors looked between him and Alara uncertainly. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Omega," he said, but there was something new in his expression. Fear. "That shrine is connected to the old bloodline. Only those with royal blood can activate it." Royal blood. Alara looked down at the silver pup in her arms, then back at the shrine. The pieces clicked into place with sudden, terrible clarity. "He's not just a prince," she said slowly. "He's the heir. The last of the silver bloodline." The commander's silence was confirmation enough. "And you were ordered to kill him, to end the bloodline completely." "The Alpha King has his reasons," the commander said. "Reasons above both our standings. Give us the pup, Omega. Walk away from this. It's not your fight." "It became my fight the moment I chose to save him." "You don't understand the politics involved. The alliance is at stake. The silver bloodline has been gone for generations. The kingdoms have moved on. This whelp is nothing but a symbol of a dead past." "He's a child," Alara said fiercely. "A living being who deserves protection, not assassination." Noble words. The commander took a step forward. But nobility doesn't stop steel. The warriors advanced as one, weapons raised. Alara placed her free hand on the shrine again, and the power responded instantly. It poured into her, through her, more than she could possibly contain. Her vision whited out. Her body felt like it was burning and freezing simultaneously, and she understood in that moment of perfect clarity what the shrine was offering. A bond. Not a mate bond or a pack bond, but something older. Something that predated the modern pack structures. A soul link between protector and protected, between guardian and prince. It would tie her to the pup permanently. His life would become hers to guard. His fate would become hers to share. And in return, she would gain access to power that had slept since the fall of the Silver Bloodline. The warriors were almost upon her. She had seconds to decide. Alara accepted the bond. Power exploded outward from her in a shockwave that sent all 5 warriors flying backward. They hit the chamber walls hard, weapons clattering from stunned hands. Alara stood in the center of the maelstrom, the silver pup cradled against her chest, and felt the bond snap into place. It was nothing like the mate bond Marcus had shattered. This was stronger, pure, unbreakable by anything short of death itself. The pup's consciousness brushed against hers, and she gasped. He was young, yes, but far more aware than any normal pup. She felt his gratitude, his trust, his absolute certainty that she would protect him. And beneath that, something else. A name, whispered in a voice that seemed to come from the shrine itself. Fenrir. The pup, Prince Fenrir, looked up at her with those pale blue eyes and yipped softly. The warriors were climbing to their feet, shaken, but not defeated. The commander stared at Alara with an expression hovering between awe and terror. You bonded with him, he said hoarsely. You actually bonded with the Silver Prince. I did, Alara confirmed. Her voice sounded different now, carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. The shrine's power still hummed through her veins. And I will defend him with everything I have. You've doomed yourself, Omega. When Alpha King Kale finds out, let him find out, Alara interrupted. Let him send his armies. Let him come himself. I will not surrender this pup to murderers. The commander's face hardened. Then you'll die with him. He lunged forward with supernatural speed, his blade aimed straight at Alara's heart. She didn't think, didn't plan. She simply reacted. Silver light erupted from her hands, forming a barrier between them. The commander's blade struck it and shattered like glass. He staggered back, staring at the broken weapon in disbelief. Leave, Alara said quietly. Now, while I'm still feeling merciful. This isn't over, the commander growled, but he was backing toward the exit, his warriors following. The Alpha King will hear of this, and when he comes, I'll be ready. The warriors fled, squeezing back through the narrow crack and disappearing into the outer cave. Their footsteps faded rapidly as they ran. Silence fell over the shrine chamber, broken only by Alara's ragged breathing and Fenrir's soft whining. The power slowly receded, flowing back into the shrine and leaving Alara trembling with exhaustion. She sank to her knees, Fenrir still secure in her arms. What did I just do? She whispered. But she knew. She'd chosen a side in a conflict she didn't fully understand. She'd bonded herself to a prince marked for death. She'd made an enemy of an Alpha King powerful enough to order the extinction of an entire bloodline. She'd thrown away any chance at a quiet life of survival and peace, and she didn't regret it for a second. Fenrir licked her face, his small tail wagging. Through their new bond, she felt his emotions clearly, joy, relief, and a bone-deep certainty that everything would be all right now. The faith of the young and innocent. Alara hoped desperately that she could live up to it. She stood on shaking legs and looked around the chamber. The shrine had dimmed but not died completely. It pulsed with a soft, steady light, like a heartbeat. On the wall behind the shrine, one of the ancient carvings had changed. It now showed 2 wolves, one large and silver, one smaller and gray, standing side by side beneath a full moon. A prophecy? A promise? A warning? Alara didn't know. But she understood one thing clearly. She and Fenrir were bound together now, for better or worse. His enemies were her enemies. His destiny was her destiny. She was no longer just a rejected Omega trying to survive in the wilderness. She was a guardian, a protector, a bondmate to the last Silver Prince. And somewhere out there, Alpha King Kale Draven was about to learn that his plan to end the Silver bloodline had just become much, much more complicated. Alara stayed in the shrine chamber for 3 days, waiting for her strength to return and giving Fenrir time to recover from their ordeal. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing hour, until she could sense his emotions as clearly as her own. His curiosity about the glowing symbols on the walls, his playful desire to explore, his complete trust in her protection. On the 4th morning, she knew they couldn't hide any longer. The warriors would return with reinforcements. Staying in one place meant becoming a target. "We need to keep moving," Alara said, scratching behind Fenrir's ears. "Find somewhere safer than a cave, no matter how magical." Fenrir yipped agreement and trotted toward the narrow exit. He'd grown noticeably larger in just these few days, his silver fur gleaming with health and vitality. The bond was accelerating his development somehow, or perhaps it was simply his royal bloodline asserting itself. They squeezed through the crack and emerged into the outer cave. Morning light streamed through the entrance, painting everything in shades of gold. It looked peaceful, deceptively so. Alara's instincts screamed danger. She froze, every sense sharpening. Fenrir felt her tension through the bond and went still beside her, his small body coiled and ready. The attack came from above. A massive gray wolf dropped from the cave ceiling where he'd been clinging to shadows, jaws aimed straight for Fenrir's exposed neck. Alara moved on pure instinct, throwing herself between them. Fangs meant for the pup sank into her shoulder instead. Pain exploded through her body. She screamed and shifted mid-fall, her wolf form erupting around the injury. The gray wolf released her and landed in a crouch, blocking the cave entrance. 2 more wolves emerged from the forest outside, one brown, one black, both battle-scarred and lethal. They moved with the coordinated precision of experienced killers. Assassins, Alara realized. Not warriors following orders. Professional murderers. The gray wolf shifted to human form, a lean man with cold eyes and a scar bisecting his face from forehead to chin. "The Omega who thinks she's a guardian. How touching." "Let us pass," Alara growled, her wolf voice distorted by pain and fury. "Can't do that." The scarred man drew a wicked-looking blade from his belt. "We have a contract. The Silver Prince dies today. You can die with him, or you can walk away. Your choice." "Never." "Predictable," he sighed. "I almost admire your loyalty, Omega. Misguided, but admirable." The brown wolf lunged. Alara barely dodged, her injured shoulder screaming in protest. She couldn't fight 3 trained killers. She had no combat training beyond basic pack drills. Her only advantages were desperation and the bond. Fenrir snarled, a sound far too large and threatening for a pup his size. Silver light began to emanate from his small body, responding to Alara's distress. "Interesting," the scarred man observed. "The whelp has power already. All the more reason to end this quickly." He moved with supernatural speed, his blade flashing toward Fenrir. Alara threw herself in its path again, taking a deep slash across her ribs. Blood sprayed across the cave floor. Through the bond, she felt Fenrir's anguish and rage. The silver light around him intensified, becoming almost blinding. And then everything changed. Power erupted from Fenrir in a shockwave that sent all 3 assassins flying backward. They hit the cave walls with bone-crushing force, their weapons clattering to the ground. But it didn't stop there. The power flowed into Alara through their bond, knitting her wounds closed in seconds. The gashes across her shoulder and ribs sealed themselves, leaving only blood-matted fur as evidence they'd existed at all. More than that, she felt stronger, faster. Her senses sharpened to painful clarity. She could hear heartbeats, smell fear sweat, see the minute tensing of muscles that telegraphed an attack before it came. The assassins climbed to their feet, but their confidence had shattered. They stared at Alara with naked fear. "What are you?" the scarred man whispered. Alara didn't answer. She shifted to human form and felt the power still coursing through her veins, making her skin glow faintly with silver light. "Last chance," she said quietly. "Leave. Tell whoever hired you that the Silver Prince is under my protection. Anyone who tries to harm him will face me." The black wolf shifted, a woman with dead eyes and a professional's assessment of odds. "There are 3 of us and 1 of you. Prince or no prince, bond or no bond. You're still just an Omega." Then test that theory, Alara invited. See what happens. For a long moment, nobody moved. The tension stretched thin and taut as a bowstring. The scarred man broke first. We'll report this to our employer. Let them decide if the contract is still viable. You do that. The three assassins backed toward the cave entrance, never taking their eyes off Ilara and Fenrir. The moment they cleared the opening, they ran, not the tactical retreat of professionals, but the panicked flight of prey. Ilara waited until their sense faded completely before allowing herself to collapse. The power drained away, leaving her shaking and exhausted. Fenrir padded over and pressed against her side, whining softly. Through the bond, she felt his concern and his guilt. He blamed himself for her injuries, despite the fact that she'd chosen to take them. Not your fault, little prince, Ilara murmured, running her fingers through his silver fur. Never your fault. But the reality of their situation was inescapable now. They couldn't keep running from individual threats. Eventually, someone would succeed. Eventually, her luck would run out. They needed allies, protection, a safe haven where Fenrir could grow strong enough to defend himself. The problem was, Ilara had no idea where to find such a place. The wolf kingdoms were ruled by alphas who'd clearly decided the silver bloodline was better off extinct. Seeking help from any pack would likely result in immediate betrayal. Unless a memory surfaced, something her father had told her years ago, when she'd been young and still believed in stories. He'd spoken of the northern reaches, the ancestral home of the silver wolves, a kingdom that had stood for thousands of years before falling to invasion and betrayal. The northern palace still stands, he'd said. Empty now, they say, haunted by the ghosts of the slaughtered. But the old magic remains, the bloodline protections. If a true silver heir ever returned, the palace would recognize them, would protect them. At the time, Ilara had dismissed it as fairy tale nonsense. The silver bloodline was extinct. Everyone knew that, except it wasn't. Fenrir was living proof. What do you think? Ilara asked him. Should we try to reach the northern reaches? Find your ancestral home? Fenrir's ears perked up. Through the bond, she felt a surge of recognition and longing so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. He didn't just want to go north. He needed to. Some instinct was calling him home. North it is, then, Ilara decided, though I have no idea how far it is or what we'll find when we get there. She gathered what few supplies she could scavenge: moss for kindling, strips of bark for cordage, a sharp stone that could serve as a makeshift knife. Not much, but more than she'd had when she left Iron Ridge. They set out at midday, heading north through territory that grew progressively wilder and more dangerous. This far from established packlands, rogues and predators hunted freely. Ilara kept Fenrir close, alert for any threat. The first 2 days passed without incident. They survived on small game Ilara managed to catch and water from mountain streams. At night, they slept curled together for warmth, the bond between them a constant comfort. On the third day, they encountered other wolves. Ilara smelled them before she saw them. A large group, at least 20 individuals, moving through the forest with military precision. She pulled Fenrir into the cover of a dense thicket and held perfectly still, praying they'd pass by. They didn't. A massive wolf broke from the group and headed straight for their hiding spot. His fur was midnight black, his eyes amber, and power radiated from him in waves that made Ilara's instincts scream submission. An alpha. A strong one. The black wolf stopped 10 feet away and shifted to human form. The man who emerged was tall and powerfully built, with sharp features and an aura of absolute authority. He wore fine clothes despite the wilderness setting, clearly someone important. "You can come out," he said, his voice carrying effortless command. "I can smell you both clearly." Ilara hesitated, then shifted and stepped from the thicket, keeping Fenrir behind her legs. "We don't want trouble. We're just passing through." The alpha's gaze swept over her dismissively before locking onto Fenrir. His eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of surprise he showed. "That's a silver wolf," he said flatly. "He's under my protection." "Is he now?" The alpha's expression remained neutral, but something dangerous flickered in his amber eyes. "And you are?" "No one. Just an Omega traveling north." An Omega traveling alone through the most dangerous wilderness on the continent, protecting a silver wolf pup. The alpha's tone suggested he found this highly unlikely. Try again. Before Alara could respond, the rest of his group emerged from the trees. Warriors, all of them, armed and armored. And in their center, surrounded by guards, walked a young woman in royal regalia. A princess, Alara realized, which meant the alpha before her was, "I am Kael Draven," the man said, confirming her worst fear. "Alpha King of the Northern Reaches. And you, Omega, are going to tell me exactly how you came to possess a silver wolf that should not exist." Alara's mind raced. Kael Draven, the very alpha who'd ordered Fenrir's death. The commander and assassins both had been acting on his orders. She was face to face with her enemy, outnumbered 20-1, exhausted and unarmed. And Kael Draven was staring at Fenrir with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not hatred, not disgust. Something more complex. Almost like pain. "I found him dying," Alara said carefully. "I saved him. That's all." "You found him." Kael's tone was flat, disbelieving. "A silver wolf pup just happened to be dying in the forest, and you, a random Omega, just happened to have the power to heal him. I don't expect you to believe me. Smart, because I don't." Kael took a step forward. His warriors mirrored the movement, hands moving to weapons. "The silver bloodline was supposed to be extinct. I made certain of that." "Then you failed," Alara said, and immediately regretted it. Kael's expression darkened. "Careful, Omega. You're in no position to provoke me. You're going to kill us anyway. Why should I be careful?" To her surprise, Kael laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You think I want to kill a pup? You think I enjoyed ordering the extinction of the silver bloodline? You gave the order, didn't you?" "I did." Kael's face was hard as stone, because the alternative was worse. Because keeping the silver heir alive would have started a war that would have killed thousands. Because sometimes there are no good choices, only necessary ones. Alara's hands clenched into fists. Necessary? Murdering a child is never necessary. You don't understand the politics involved, the treaties at stake, the alliances that would crumble if... Kael stopped abruptly, his jaw tightening. "I don't owe you explanations." "No," Alara agreed. "You owe me nothing, but you owe him everything." She stepped aside, letting Kael see Fenrir clearly. The pup had grown even more in the past few days, now nearly the size of a juvenile wolf. His silver fur gleamed in the sunlight, and his pale blue eyes met Kael's amber ones without fear. Something shifted in Kael's expression. His mask of cold authority slipped for just a moment, revealing raw anguish beneath. "He has his mother's eyes," Kael whispered. Then louder to his warriors, "Stand down! No one touches the pup!" Confused murmurs rippled through the group. The princess pushed forward, her face a mixture of shock and fury. "Brother, have you lost your mind? That's the silver heir. The one we've been hunting for months. We have him right here, and you're ordering us to stand down?" "Yes, Liana, that's exactly what I'm doing. But the treaty... Damn the treaty!" Kael's roar silenced every voice in the clearing. "I've already sacrificed too much for that cursed agreement. I won't add a child to the list." He turned back to Alara, and she saw something she never expected in an Alpha King's eyes. Regret. "You said you found him dying," Kael said quietly. "Where?" 2 weeks south of here. He'd been attacked, left with wounds that should have killed him. By my warriors. On my orders. It wasn't a question. Kael's expression was bleak. They were supposed to make it quick, painless. I never imagined he'd suffer. "But you still ordered his death." "I did." Kael met her gaze steadily, unflinching. "And I would do it again if the alternative was what the council threatened. But now that he's here, alive, bonded to you..." He paused, clearly sensing the soul link between them. "Now the situation has changed." "How?" Alara demanded. Before Kael could answer, a howl split the air, distant but unmistakable. A warning cry that made every wolf in the clearing tense. "Raiders," one of the warriors reported, "coming from the east, at least 30, maybe more." Kael cursed viciously. "They must have been tracking us. Liana, get to the center of the formation. Warriors, defensive positions." The group moved with practiced efficiency, forming a protective circle around the princess. Kael shifted to his massive black wolf form, power radiating from him in waves. Alara grabbed Fenrir and started to back away, but Kael's mental voice stopped her. "Stay with us. You'll be safer in the formation than running." "Why would you protect us?" "Because complicated as this situation is, I'm not going to let raiders kill you both. Move. Now." Alara hesitated only a moment before obeying, pulling Fenrir into the protective circle. The warriors around her looked uncertain but didn't protest. The raiders burst from the forest like a flood, wolves of all sizes and colors, their eyes wild with bloodlust. These weren't organized warriors. They were rogues who'd banded together, desperate and dangerous, and they outnumbered Kael's group 2-1. The battle erupted with savage intensity. Kael was a force of nature, his massive black wolf tearing through enemies with brutal efficiency. His warriors fought with disciplined ferocity, holding the formation despite overwhelming numbers. But the raiders kept coming, drawn by the scent of royal blood. They focused their attack on the princess, trying to break through the defensive line. Alara crouched over Fenrir, shielding him with her body as the battle raged around them. Blood sprayed across her face. The screams of dying wolves filled the air. This was war in its rawest form, savage and merciless. A raider broke through the line, jaws snapping toward Princess Liana. The nearest warrior was too far away to intercept. Alara moved without thinking. She shifted and lunged, catching the raider's throat in her jaws and bearing him to the ground through sheer momentum rather than strength. They rolled together, a tangle of fur and fangs, and when they separated, the raider's throat was torn open. Alara stared at the dying wolf in shock. She'd actually killed another wolf. "Behind you!" Liana's scream cut through her daze. Alara spun and saw 3 more raiders charging toward her, toward Fenrir. Silver light exploded from the pup as his power activated again, responding to the threat. It poured into Alara through their bond, magnifying her strength and speed beyond anything she'd experienced before. She met the raiders head-on. Her smaller size became an advantage as she ducked under their attacks and struck at vulnerable points: throats, bellies, legs. She moved like water, like wind, like something more than wolf. Within seconds, all 3 raiders lay dead or dying. The remaining attackers saw this and hesitated. An Omega had just killed 3 of their number in heartbeats. It shouldn't be possible. Kael seized the moment. He rallied his warriors and drove forward in a coordinated charge that shattered the raiders' formation. Within minutes, the survivors were fleeing back into the forest, abandoning their dead. Silence fell over the clearing, broken only by heavy breathing and the moans of the wounded. Alara shifted back to human form, trembling with adrenaline and horror. 3 dead wolves lay at her feet. She'd killed them. The reality of it crashed over her in waves. "Breathe," Kael's voice cut through her panic. He'd shifted as well and now stood before her, blood-spattered but unharmed. "Just breathe. The first kill is always the hardest." I never thought I could." "You protected your charge. That's what guardians do." Kael's expression was unreadable. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" "I didn't. I just reacted." "No." Kael shook his head. "That was skill. Instinct, yes, but honed by something. The bond?" Alara nodded mutely, still staring at the dead raiders. "Extraordinary." Kael studied her with new intensity. "A soul link with a silver prince, granting you access to the bloodline's power. I've read about such bonds in ancient texts, but I never thought to see one in reality." "Is that why you're not killing us?" Alara found her voice, though it shook. "Because I'm useful now?" "I'm not killing you because I choose not to," Kael said firmly. "But yes, your bond changes things. It changes everything, actually." He turned to address his warriors and sister. "We return to the palace. Immediately. I need to consult the archives and speak with the council." "Brother, you can't be serious," Liana protested. "You're bringing the silver heir to our home? After everything we've done to prevent exactly this?" "I don't recall asking your permission, sister." Kael's tone brooked no argument. "The decision is made." He looked back at Alara. "You wanted to reach the northern reaches. Congratulations. You're about to see the Silver Wolves' ancestral palace, though I suspect not under the circumstances you imagined." Alara's mind reeled. Alpha King Kale, the man who'd ordered Fenrir's death, was now offering them protection, taking them to the very palace she'd been trying to reach. Why? She asked simply. Why are you helping us? Kale's expression turned bleak. Because I made a terrible choice months ago, one that's haunted me every day since, and now fate has given me a chance to make it right. I'm not fool enough to ignore that opportunity. He extended his hand. Come with us, Omega. You and the prince. I can't promise safety. Nowhere is truly safe for him. But I can promise you'll have a fighting chance. More than you'd have alone in the wilderness. Elara looked at the offered hand, then at Fenrir. Through the bond, she felt the pup's certainty. He trusted Kael. Somehow, impossibly, he sensed no threat from the Alpha King. She took Kael's hand. I'm Elara, she said. Elara Voss, not just Omega. A ghost of a smile touched Kael's lips. Elara, then, welcome to a complication I suspect will reshape the northern kingdoms, for better or worse. They traveled for 5 days, moving through territory that grew progressively more civilized as they approached Packlands. The warriors treated Elara with wary respect, clearly uncertain how to interact with an Omega who'd killed 3 raiders and survived bonding with a silver prince. Princess Liana was less subtle. She watched Elara with open hostility, her suspicion radiating like heat. On the 3rd night, she cornered Elara while the others set up camp. What's your game? Liana demanded without preamble. I don't have a game. I'm just trying to keep Fenrir alive. Fenrir, Liana's lip curled. You named him. He needed a name. He needs to disappear. Do you understand what his existence means? The chaos it will cause? The treaty between our kingdom and the Blood Moon Pact specifically requires the Silver Bloodline's extinction. If they learn Kael has harbored the heir, then they'll what? Start a war? Yes, Liana's composure cracked. A war that will kill thousands, all for one pup who represents a dead dynasty. He's not just a pup. He's a living being who deserves to save the speeches, Omega. I've heard them all before. Liana leaned close, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. My brother is allowing sentiment to cloud his judgment, but I won't. If that pup threatens my people, my kingdom, I will end him myself, bond or no bond. Elara met her gaze steadily. You can try. Liana's eyes widened slightly, surprised by the steel in Elara's voice. Then she smiled, a cold, sharp expression. Perhaps you're not as weak as you look. Good. You'll need that strength when the council tears you apart. She walked away, leaving Elara alone with the growing certainty that Kael's palace held as much danger as protection. The Northern Reach's palace appeared on the horizon at sunset on the 5th day, a massive structure of white stone that seemed to glow in the fading light. It was beautiful and terrible at once, a monument to power and legacy. Fenrir's excitement blazed through the bond as they approached. He recognized this place on some instinctive level, responding to it the way a salmon responds to its spawning grounds. Home, his emotions seemed to say. This is home. The palace gates opened at their approach, guards snapping to attention as Kael passed. Servants hurried forward to tend the wounded warriors. And deep within the palace, Elara could sense other presences, powerful alphas and nobles who'd heard of their arrival and were gathering like vultures. Kael led them through marble corridors to a private wing. You'll stay here, he said, gesturing to a suite of rooms. My personal guards will be stationed outside. No one enters without my permission. Are we prisoners or guests? Elara asked. Both, neither. I haven't decided yet. Kael's honesty was almost refreshing. The council meets tomorrow. They'll want to see the Silver Prince for themselves. After that, he shrugged. We'll see what happens. He turned to leave, then paused. Elara, what you did during the raider attack, protecting Liana even though she's made no secret of her hostility toward you. Why? She's your sister. You were protecting us. It seemed only fair to return the favor. Fair. Kael tasted the word like something foreign. I haven't heard that word used unironically in years. Perhaps you truly are as unusual as you seem. After he left, Elara explored the suite with Fenrir. It was luxurious beyond anything she'd experienced. Silk sheets, carved furniture, windows overlooking formal gardens, a prison made of velvet and gold. That night she couldn't sleep. Her mind kept circling back to Liana's threat and the looming council meeting. She'd survived rejection, wilderness, assassins, and raiders. But politics might prove more dangerous than all of those combined. Fenrir whined softly, sensing her distress through the bond. "I know," Alara murmured, stroking his silver fur. "I'm scared too, but we've made it this far. We just have to keep going." A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Alara tensed, but the voice that called through the door was familiar. "It's Kael. May I enter?" Alara opened the door, surprised to find the Alpha King alone and unarmed. He looked tired, shadows beneath his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "Haven't slept properly in months." Kael entered and moved to the window, staring out at the moonlit gardens. "Not since I gave the order to exterminate the silver bloodline." "Why did you? You never explained." Kael was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with old pain. "Fenrir's mother was my mate. My true mate, not a political arrangement. Her name was Celine, and she was the last of the Silver Royal line. Beautiful, powerful, and completely unsuited for the cruel realities of pack politics." Alara's breath caught. "Was?" "She died giving birth to Fenrir, our son." Kael's voice cracked on those last two words. The Blood Moon Pack learned of his birth and issued an ultimatum: surrender the silver heir to them for execution or face total war. They had allies. We didn't. The mathematics were clear. Thousands would die to save one pup. "So you chose to kill your own son." "I chose to save my kingdom." Kael turned and his expression was haunted. "I told myself it was the right decision. The necessary one. But every day since, I've wondered if I was just a coward who couldn't face the alternative." Alara didn't know what to say. The weight of Kael's confession hung between them like a physical thing. "When I saw him today," Kael continued, "alive and healthy and looking so much like Celine, I realized I'd been given a chance I didn't deserve, a chance to choose differently." "The Blood Moon Pack will still come," Alara pointed out. "The treaty still exists." "I know." Kael's smile was grim. "Which is why tomorrow's council meeting will determine all our fates. Either they agree to support me in breaking the treaty, or what? Or they'll demand I honor my original decision. And this time, there's a bonded guardian standing between me and my son, which means to execute him, they'll have to go through you." Alara felt ice crystallize in her chest. "You're saying they might kill us both." "I'm saying tomorrow will be the most dangerous day of your life. And I'm sorry. Sorry for all of this. Sorry that my political failures made you a target. Sorry that Fenrir's existence is considered a threat rather than a blessing." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm glad he found you. Glad he has a protector who sees him as a person rather than a political liability. Celine would have liked you." After he left, Alara sat in the darkness, holding Fenrir close. Tomorrow she would face a council of alphas. Tomorrow, she would learn if Kael's protection meant anything against the weight of politics and treaties. Tomorrow, she might die. But tonight, she was alive. Fenrir was alive. And she'd made the Alpha King himself acknowledge his son's worth. It wasn't enough, but it was something. She finally fell asleep just before dawn, Fenrir warm against her side, and dreamed of silver wolves running free beneath a full moon. A future that might exist if she could just survive one more day. The council chamber was exactly as intimidating as Alara had feared. 20 alphas sat in a circle, each representing a major pack or territory in the northern kingdoms. Their combined power pressed against her like a physical weight, making it hard to breathe. Kael sat at the head, regal and authoritative in his formal robes. Liana stood at his right hand, her expression carefully neutral. And Alara stood in the center of the circle, Fenrir pressed against her legs, facing judgment. "Present the evidence," one of the alphas demanded, an older man with silver-streaked hair and cold eyes. Kael gestured, and warriors brought forward the assassins who'd attacked them in the cave. They'd been captured after the failed mission, and they looked terrified. "Tell the council what you told me," Kael commanded. The scarred assassin stepped forward, his voice shaking. We were hired by representatives of the Blood Moon Pact to eliminate the Silver Heir. We tracked him to the Omega and attempted to complete our contract, but she... He looked at Alara with something approaching awe. She bonded with the prince, soul-linked, the power that came from that bond. We've never seen anything like it. Murmurs rippled through the council. Several alphas leaned forward, studying Alara with new intensity. A soul link, one of them breathed, like the ancient guardians. Impossible, another scoffed. Those bonds haven't existed for millennia, and yet here we are, Kael said dryly. The proof stands before you. My son lives, bonded to an Omega who wields the old bloodline's power through their connection. Your son, the silver-haired alpha's tone was accusing. The same son you agreed to eliminate as part of the Blood Moon Treaty. You swore an oath, Kael. I did, and I broke it. Kael's voice rang with absolute authority. I choose my son over that cursed treaty. I choose to give him the chance his mother wanted him to have. A choice that will cost thousands of lives when the Blood Moon Pact retaliates. Perhaps. Kael stood, his presence filling the chamber. Or perhaps it's time we stopped cowering before bullies. The Blood Moon Pact demanded the extinction of the Silver Bloodline because they feared its power. Well, that power exists, it's real, and it's standing in this chamber right now. All eyes turned to Alara. She felt their assessment, their judgment, their fear and fascination. What do you have to say, Omega? The silver-haired alpha demanded. You've disrupted kingdoms and broken treaties. You've given hope to a bloodline that should have ended. What defense do you offer? Alara took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would determine everything. I offer no defense, she said clearly. I saved a dying pup because it was the right thing to do. I bonded with him because he needed protection. I've killed to keep him safe, and I'll kill again if I must. You can call that disruption. You can call it a threat. But I call it justice. Justice? The alpha laughed bitterly. An Omega speaks to us of justice? Yes. Alara's voice grew stronger. Because I understand exactly what it means to be deemed worthless. To be cast aside because you don't fit someone else's definition of valuable. Fenrir's only crime is being born. My only crime is refusing to let him die for it. If that makes me your enemy, so be it. But I will not apologize for choosing compassion over convenience. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Kael spoke, his voice resonant with power. The Omega speaks truth that shames us all. We've become so focused on political expediency that we've forgotten what we're supposed to protect. Not treaties, not territories, people, lives. The innocent and powerless who depend on us to be better than our fears. Pretty words, the silver-haired alpha sneered. But the Blood Moon Pact won't be swayed by speeches. When they come, and they will come, what then? Then we fight, Kael said simply. We fight for the right of my son to exist, and we show the Blood Moon Pact that the northern kingdoms will not be bullied into murdering children. You'll start a war. They started this war when they demanded I kill my infant son. Kael's roar silenced all protest. I was a coward then. I chose the easy path. But no more. If war comes, let it come. At least we'll fight for something worth defending. The chamber erupted in shouting. Some alphas supported Kael. Others condemned him. The council fractured before Alara's eyes, dividing into factions. And then the doors burst open. A messenger stumbled in, blood streaming from a wound on his shoulder. Alpha King, Blood Moon warriors. They're at the gates, hundreds of them. They demand you surrender the Silver Heir immediately, or face annihilation. Alara's world tilted. They were here. Already. How? Kael's face went hard. How long do we have? Minutes, my lord. They've surrounded the palace. Their alpha leads them personally. Then we're out of time for debate. Kael turned to the council. Choose, now. Stand with me or step aside, but choose. For a long, terrible moment, nobody moved. Then, one by one, alphas stood. Not all of them, but enough. We stand with you, they declared. Kael nodded once, sharp and decisive. Then we defend this palace and everyone in it, to battle positions. The chamber emptied in organized chaos. Warriors rushed to their posts. Civilians were evacuated to inner chambers. The palace transformed into a fortress in minutes. Alara stood frozen until Kael gripped her shoulder. Take Fenrir to the deepest vault. There's a passage that leads outside the palace grounds. If we fall, no. Alara's voice was absolute. We don't run, not anymore. Alara, you can't fight an army. Watch me. She didn't wait for his response. She scooped up Fenrir and ran toward the palace walls, toward the sound of approaching war. Behind her, she heard Kael curse and follow. The Blood Moon Pack's army stood before the gates like a tide of death, hundreds of wolves in battle formation, their eyes gleaming with bloodlust. At their head stood their alpha, a massive gray wolf who radiated power that rivaled Kael's own. He shifted to human form, a brutal-looking man with tribal scars across his face and eyes like frozen amber. Kael Draven! His voice carried easily across the distance. You've broken our treaty. You harbor the silver heir. Surrender him now, and we'll show mercy to your pack. Kael stepped onto the wall, Alara beside him with Fenrir in her arms. I will not surrender my son to murderers, Ragnar. Not now, not ever. Ragnar's smile was cruel. Then you've chosen death for your entire kingdom. So be it. He raised his hand to signal the attack. And Alara, in that moment of absolute crisis, made a choice that would change everything. She released her hold on the bond's power, letting it flow through her unrestricted. Silver light exploded from her body, from Fenrir's, merging and amplifying until it blazed like a second sun. The light swept across the battlefield, and where it touched, wolves froze. Not in fear, in recognition. The silver bloodline's power wasn't just about healing or strength. It was about command, authority coded into the blood of every wolf, a genetic imperative that predated modern pack structures. Kneel before your prince. The Blood Moon warriors dropped as one, their bodies responding to a compulsion older than thought. Even Ragnar stumbled, fighting against instincts that screamed submission. Alara's voice rang out, amplified by the power flowing through her. You came to kill a child, an innocent, and you call yourselves wolves? You call yourselves honorable? She stepped forward, Fenrir held high. This is Prince Fenrir, last of the silver bloodline, and I am his guardian. Anyone who wishes to harm him will face me, will face the power you thought extinct, will face the consequences of threatening royal blood. The light pulsed brighter, and several Blood Moon warriors actually whimpered. Ragnar fought back to his feet, his face twisted with rage and fear. This changes nothing. One Omega with borrowed power against an army, not just one Omega. Kael stepped forward, power radiating from him. The Alpha King of the Northern Reaches stands with her. And the Northern Council, other Alphas declared, joining them on the wall. And the Palace Guard, warriors called from their posts. One by one, voices joined the chorus until it became a roar of defiance. Ragnar stared at the united front before him, calculation warring with fury in his expression. His army outnumbered theirs, but the silver power and the unified northern kingdoms made the odds much more even. This isn't over, Draven, Ragnar snarled. You've made an enemy today that will haunt you. Then join the list, Kael said coldly. It's already quite long. Ragnar held his gaze for another moment, then shifted and ran. His army followed, their retreat so rapid it bordered on rout. The silver light faded, and Alara collapsed. She woke in a soft bed, Fenrir curled against her side, and Kael sitting in a chair nearby. How long? She asked, her voice hoarse. 2 days. You pushed yourself too far with that display. Kael leaned forward. But it worked. The Blood Moon Pack is in retreat, and the Council has voted unanimously to protect Fenrir and acknowledge him as the Silver Heir. They have? You terrified them, Kael said with a slight smile. Nothing motivates alphas like fear of superior power. They want you and Fenrir on their side, not against them. Alara sat up slowly, processing this. So we're safe? For now. Ragnar will return eventually, with allies and better preparation. But we have time to prepare. Time to make Fenrir strong enough to defend himself. Time to rebuild the alliances we need. He stood and moved toward the door, then paused. You did something impossible today, Alara. You united the northern kingdoms, made them see past politics to basic morality. That's a rare gift. I just did what needed to be done. Exactly. Kael's smile was genuine now. Which is why I'm officially appointing you as Fenrir's guardian and giving you a seat on the council. The northern kingdoms need voices like yours. After he left, Alara lay back and pulled Fenrir close. Through the bond, she felt his contentment, his trust, his absolute certainty that everything would be all right. She'd started this journey as a rejected Omega with nothing to lose. Now she was a guardian, a council member, a force that had made an entire army retreat. But more than any title or position, she was Fenrir's protector, and anyone who tried to harm him would learn exactly how much power a determined Omega could wield. The weeks following the Blood Moon Pack's retreat transformed the northern reaches in ways no one had anticipated. Alara found herself thrust into a world of politics and power she'd never imagined navigating, while Fenrir grew at an astonishing rate, physically, mentally, and in his command of the Silver Bloodline's abilities. But peace was an illusion, and Alara knew it. She stood in the council chamber for the third time that week, facing alphas who still looked at her with varying degrees of suspicion and grudging respect. The silver-haired alpha, Elder Matthias, she'd learned his name was, spoke with barely concealed irritation. You cannot simply refuse to explain how the bond works, Guardian. The council has a right to understand the power you wield. I've told you everything I know, Alara said evenly. The bond formed when Fenrir was dying and I chose to save him. It allows us to share power and emotions. Beyond that, I understand it as little as you do. Convenient. Matthias's tone dripped skepticism. An Omega suddenly wielding ancient magic, and she claims ignorance of its source. I claim nothing. I simply state facts. Perhaps, another alpha interjected, a woman named Vera with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. But facts aren't the issue here. The issue is trust. You appeared from nowhere, bonded with the Silver Heir, and now sit on this council. Many in our packs question whether you serve Fenrir's interests or your own ambitions. Alara forced herself to remain calm, though anger simmered beneath her skin. My ambition is to keep Fenrir alive and safe. If that threatens anyone here, perhaps they should examine their own priorities. The chamber erupted in heated debate. Kyle, presiding from his seat, let it continue for several minutes before raising his hand for silence. Enough. We've circled this argument 3 times now, and it grows no more productive. His amber eyes swept the room. Alara has proven her loyalty through actions, not words. She faced assassins, raiders, and an invading army to protect my son. That earns her place here, regardless of your suspicions. With respect, Alpha King, Matthias said carefully, your personal feelings toward the Guardian may cloud your judgment. The Omega has clearly bonded with the Prince, yes, but we still don't know her true origins, her former pack, her— Iron Ridge, Alara interrupted. The name tasted bitter on her tongue. I was Omega in the Iron Ridge pack. Future mate to Alpha Heir Marcus Thorn until he rejected me publicly and had me cast out 3 weeks before I found Fenrir. Is that origin story satisfactory? Shocked silence filled the chamber. Several council members exchanged glances. Marcus Thorn, Vera said slowly. I know that name. Young, ambitious, rising quickly in the Southern Territories. And he rejected you? For being too weak to bear him powerful heirs. For being Omega. For being, in his words, deficient. Alara met their stares without flinching. So yes, I have no pack, no family, no political connections. Just a bond to a prince and the will to protect him. If that's insufficient for this council, I'll leave. But Fenrir comes with me. You can't just— Matthias started. Actually, she can, Kyle cut him off. The bond makes them inseparable. Where Fenrir goes, Alara goes. That's not negotiable. The council members shifted uncomfortably, realizing the trap they'd walked into. They needed Fenrir, his bloodline, his power, his legitimacy as the Silver Heir, which meant they needed Alara, whether they trusted her or not. This discussion is tabled, Kyle declared. We have more pressing concerns. Reports indicate the Blood Moon Pack is gathering allies for another assault. We need to focus on defense, not internal politics. As the meeting dispersed, Liana approached Alara with an expression of grudging respect. You handled that well. Matthias has been trying to undermine you for weeks. I noticed. He's afraid of you. They all are. Liana's smile was sharp. An Omega who commands the ancient power and sits equal to Alphas? It threatens everything they believe about pack hierarchy. Is that why you don't trust me either? Liana's smile faded. I don't trust you because my brother cares about you, both you and Fenrir, and caring makes him vulnerable, makes him make decisions based on emotion rather than strategy. Like choosing to protect his son instead of murdering him for political convenience? Exactly like that. Liana's honesty was brutal. That choice may save Fenrir's life, but it will cost many others theirs when war comes. Can you live with that weight? Before Alara could answer, a young warrior burst into the chamber. Guardian Alara, it's the prince! Something's wrong! Alara didn't wait for details. She ran, her heart pounding, following the warrior through marble corridors to Fenrir's chambers. The bond had been quiet all morning. Too quiet, she realized now. She should have noticed. She found Fenrir collapsed on the floor, his silver fur dull and his breathing labored. His pale blue eyes were glazed with pain. Fenrir? Alara dropped beside him, her hands already glowing with healing power. But the energy stuttered and failed. Something was blocking it. Kyle arrived moments later, his face pale. What happened? I don't know. The bond. It's being disrupted somehow. I can't reach him properly. A healer rushed in, an elderly woman named Moira with decades of experience. She examined Fenrir quickly, her expression growing more grave with each passing second. Poison, Moira announced. Shadow root, if I'm not mistaken. It's designed to sever magical bonds and cause slow, painful death. How? Kyle demanded. His chambers are guarded constantly. No one unauthorized enters. Someone authorized, then. Moira's implication hung heavy in the air. Alara's mind raced through the morning. Fenrir had eaten breakfast, food brought by palace servants she'd seen dozens of times. He'd played in the gardens under guard supervision. He'd attended a brief tutoring session with Elder Matthias, Alara breathed. He came to give Fenrir a history lesson this morning, alone, at his insistence. Kale's expression turned murderous. Guards, find Matthias, now! But Alara wasn't listening anymore. Through the deteriorating bond, she felt Fenrir's life force fading. The poison was working fast, specifically designed to target silver bloodline wolves. How long does he have? She asked Moira. Hours, maybe less. Shadowroot has no antidote. Once it's in the system, there has to be something we can do. I'm sorry, Guardian. Magic this dark is beyond my skill. No. Alara refused to accept that. She hadn't survived everything she'd survived just to watch Fenrir die from poison administered by a traitor. The bond might be blocked, but it wasn't severed. Not completely. She could still feel that thin thread connecting them, growing frailer with each heartbeat. What had she done in the cave when Fenrir was dying the first time? She'd poured her own life force into him through the bond, healing him with power she didn't understand. Could she do it again, even with the poison blocking the bond's full strength? Everyone out, Alara commanded. Guardian, you can't possibly… Moira started. Out, now. Kale hesitated, then ushered everyone from the room. Do what you need to do. I'll handle Matthias. Alone with Fenrir, Alara gathered every scrap of willpower she possessed. The bond was blocked, yes, but blocks could be broken. She placed both hands on Fenrir's chest and closed her eyes, reaching for the connection between them. The poison had wrapped around it like thorns, dark and invasive. Touching it sent pain lancing through her own body. But pain was just sensation. She could endure sensation. Alara pushed through the thorns, forcing the bond open wider. The poison fought back, trying to sever the connection completely. She felt it spreading into her own system, her own magical channels. Good. Let it spread to her. She was stronger than Fenrir. She could carry more of the burden. She pulled the poison from Fenrir's body into her own, using the bond as a conduit. It felt like swallowing acid, like her blood was turning to ice and fire simultaneously. Fenrir's breathing eased slightly. The glazed look in his eyes cleared, but Alara could feel the poison taking hold in her own system now. Her vision blurred, her muscles began to spasm. Not enough. She'd only transferred some of it. Fenrir would still die unless she took it all. I'm sorry, Alara whispered. This is going to hurt both of us. She ripped the bond wide open, ignoring the agony as thorns tore at her consciousness. The poison rushed into her like a flood, abandoning Fenrir's weakened body for the stronger vessel of his guardian. Fenrir gasped and scrambled to his feet, suddenly alert and healthy. Alara collapsed, convulsing as the full dose of shadow root coursed through her veins. Through dimming vision, she saw Fenrir's terrified face, felt his panic through the bond. "It's okay," she managed to say. "You're safe. That's what matters." The door burst open. Kyle rushed in, saw Fenrir standing healthy, and Alara dying on the floor, and understood immediately. "You transferred the poison to yourself." "Only way," Alara gasped. Her lungs were seizing up. "Couldn't let him die. You foolish, brave—" Kale's voice broke. He turned to Moira, who'd followed him in. "Fix this. Now." "My lord, I told you there's no antidote." "Then make one. Use every resource we have. I don't care if you have to tear apart the entire kingdom's medical library. You will save her." Moira fled to obey. Kale gathered Alara into his arms, and she was shocked to see tears on the Alpha King's face. "Don't you dare die," he commanded. "You hear me? That's an order from your king." Alara tried to smile, but couldn't manage it. The poison was shutting down her vital systems one by one. She had minutes at most. Fenrir pressed against her side, whining desperately. Through the bond, she felt him trying to push healing energy back into her the way she'd healed him countless times. But he was too young, too inexperienced. The power manifested but couldn't focus properly. "Can't help me," Alara whispered. "Not strong enough yet." Fenrir's whine became a howl of pure anguish. And then something remarkable happened. The bond exploded with power, not Fenrir's alone, but combined with something else. Someone else. Kale's hands were glowing silver where they touched Alara. "What?" Alara gasped. "I'm his father," Kale said through gritted teeth. "The bloodline runs in me too, though diluted, and I'll be damned if I let you die saving my son." He poured his own life force through Fenrir, using the pup as a conduit to reach Alara. The combined power of Alpha King and Silver Prince burned through the poison like sunlight through shadow. The shadow root fought back viciously. Alara felt it trying to spread to Kyle, to Fenrir, to corrupt the bond itself. But 3 was stronger than 1. 3 minds, 3 wills, 3 souls bound together and refusing to yield. The poison burned away in silver fire, leaving Alara gasping and weak but alive. She opened her eyes to find both Kyle and Fenrir collapsed beside her, equally exhausted. The 3 of them lay tangled together on the floor, breathing hard, alive against all odds. "That," Alara managed eventually, "was incredibly stupid of you." Kyle laughed weakly. "Says the woman who absorbed lethal poison to save a pup. He's not just a pup, he's my son." "I know." Kale met her eyes. "And you're his guardian, which makes you family. We protect family, no matter the cost." Moira returned with a team of healers, all of them stopping short at the sight of the 3 of them alive and recovering. "How is this possible?" Moira breathed. "Shadowroot is always fatal." "Apparently not," Kale said, climbing slowly to his feet. "When you have an Omega stubborn enough to absorb it, a Silver Prince powerful enough to channel healing, and an Alpha foolish enough to help." He helped Alara stand, then scooped Fenrir into his arms. The pup immediately started licking his father's face with puppyish enthusiasm, as if they hadn't all just nearly died. "Where's Matthias?" Alara asked. Kale's expression turned cold. "In the dungeons." He confessed under questioning. The Blood Moon Pack paid him well to eliminate Fenrir. They promised him control of the northern reaches after I fell fighting them. "And now?" "Now he awaits execution for treason and attempted regicide." Kale's voice held no mercy. "The sentence will be carried out publicly tomorrow, as a message to any other traitors considering similar action." Alara nodded, feeling nothing but grim satisfaction. Matthias had tried to murder a child for political gain. He deserved whatever fate awaited him. The next day, the entire palace gathered to witness Matthias's execution. Alara stood on the platform beside Kyle, Fenrir at her feet, as the traitor was brought forward in chains. Matthias looked smaller somehow, stripped of his authority and dignity, but his eyes burned with unrepentant hatred as he stared at Alara. You should have stayed in whatever hole you crawled from, Omega, he spat. You've doomed this kingdom with your interference. I saved a child's life, Ilara said calmly. If that dooms your kingdom, then it was already rotten from within. Enough, Kael commanded. Elder Matthias, you have been found guilty of treason, attempted murder of the Silver Heir, and conspiracy with enemy forces. Have you any final words? Only these. Matthias's smile was cruel. You think you've won? You think the Blood Moon Pack is your only enemy? There are forces moving that you can't comprehend, girl. Powers that will tear this fragile alliance apart and leave the Silver Whelp's corpse decorating a pike. Who? Kael demanded. Name your allies! But Matthias only laughed, and then the executioner's blade fell. Silence followed his death. Then, slowly, the gathered wolves began to disperse, murmuring among themselves. Ilara felt Kael's tension beside her. What did he mean? What other forces? I don't know, but we'll find out. Kael turned to her. The council needs to know about what happened yesterday, about how we defeated the poison together. Will they believe it? They'll have to. We have 3 living witnesses and Moira's testimony. Kael's expression was thoughtful. Actually, this might work in our favor. If the council sees that my bloodline connection allows me to channel the silver power through Fenrir, they'll see you as more valuable, Ilara finished, less likely to be overthrown or challenged. Exactly. Politics is a brutal game, Ilara. We have to use every advantage we can find. The emergency council session was called that afternoon. Ilara recounted the poisoning and subsequent healing in clinical detail, leaving nothing out. The council members listened in growing astonishment. You're saying the Alpha King shares the Silver Bloodline's power? Vera asked. Through Fenrir, yes, Ilara confirmed. The bond between them as father and son creates a conduit. It's not as strong as my guardian bond, but it exists. This changes everything. Another Alpha, a young man named Roland, leaned forward excitedly. If the Bloodline's power can be accessed through familial bonds, then marrying into the Silver Line becomes incredibly valuable. Fenrir is a pup, Ilara said sharply, not a political bargaining chip. He's the Silver Heir, Roland countered. Politics is inescapable. When he comes of age, every pack with a daughter will be vying for his favor. That's a problem for a decade from now, Kael cut in. Right now we need to focus on the immediate threat. Matthias mentioned other forces working against us. I want intelligence gathered on all potential enemies, not just the Blood Moon Pack. I'll coordinate with our scouts, Vera offered. But Alpha King, if I may, the Guardian's actions yesterday prove her loyalty beyond question. Perhaps it's time to formally recognize her position. What do you propose? Make her your second, officially. Give her authority to act in your name regarding Fenrir's protection and welfare. The chamber erupted in debate. Some alphas supported the idea, others vehemently opposed it. An Omega as the king's second? One alpha sputtered. It's unprecedented, unthinkable. So was a guardian bond, Vera shot back. So was defeating shadowroot poison. We're living in unprecedented times. Either we adapt or we die clinging to outdated traditions. The argument raged for hours. Ilara sat silent, watching the politics unfold around her. She didn't want titles or authority. She just wanted Fenrir safe. But she was beginning to understand that in this world, safety required power, and power required position. Finally, as sunset painted the chamber in shades of gold and red, Kael called for a vote. All in favor of formally recognizing Ilara Voss as my second and granting her authority over matters concerning the Silver Heir's protection? Hands rose slowly. Not all of them, but more than half. The motion passes, Kael declared. Ilara Voss, you are hereby appointed second to the Alpha King of the Northern Reaches, with all rights and responsibilities therein. Ilara felt the weight of the title settle over her like a physical thing. She was no longer just a guardian. She was now one of the most powerful figures in the kingdom, a rejected Omega from Iron Ridge, now second only to the Alpha King himself. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so terrifying. After the session ended, Liana cornered Ilara in the corridor. Congratulations, you've climbed higher than any Omega in recorded history. I didn't ask for this. No one who deserves power ever does. That's what makes them worth following. Liana's expression was unreadable. My brother is making you into something unprecedented. I hope you're ready for the consequences. What consequences? Every wolf in the kingdom is watching you now, measuring you, waiting for you to fail. Omega or not, bond or not, you'll be held to the same standards as any alpha. One mistake, one moment of weakness, and they'll tear you apart. Then I won't make mistakes. Liana actually smiled. Arrogant. Good. You'll need that. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad you saved Fenrir yesterday. And I'm glad my brother has someone he can trust absolutely. It's rare in our world. She left before Alara could respond. That night, Alara stood in Fenrir's chambers, watching him sleep. He'd grown again, now the size of an adolescent wolf, his silver fur gleaming in the moonlight. Through the bond, she felt his dreams, running free through forests, playing with other pups, living without fear. Simple dreams. Innocent dreams. Dreams she'd fight entire armies to make reality. Can't sleep either? Alara turned to find Kael in the doorway. He looked tired but satisfied, still wearing his formal robes from the council session. Too much has happened, Alara admitted. A month ago, I was being rejected and cast out. Now I'm second to an alpha king. It doesn't feel real. It is real. And you've earned every bit of it. Kael moved to stand beside her, looking down at his sleeping son. I've been thinking about what Matthias said, about other forces working against us. Do you have any ideas who? Several. None of them pleasant? Kael's jaw tightened. The Blood Moon Pack isn't our only enemy. There are older powers, darker ones, who have their own reasons to fear the Silver Bloodline's return. Like what? Have you heard of the Shadow Council? Alara shook her head. Good. That means they're still operating in secrecy. Kael's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. They're a coalition of wolves who believe in the old ways. Pure bloodlines, strict hierarchy, elimination of anything they deem corrupted or weak. The Silver Wolves opposed them centuries ago, which is part of why the bloodline was targeted for extinction. And you think they're involved now? I think Matthias's confidence came from somewhere. The Blood Moon Pack is strong, yes, but not strong enough to promise him control of the northern reaches. He had other backers. More powerful ones. A chill ran down Alara's spine. So even if we defeat the Blood Moon Pack, there will be others, yes. Kael met her eyes. This is the reality you've walked into, Alara. By saving Fenrir, by bonding with him, you've made yourself a target for forces that have been operating in shadows for generations. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to prepare you. Because what comes next will make everything we've faced so far look like a training exercise. They stood in silence for a long moment, watching Fenrir sleep peacefully, unaware of the threats gathering against him. He deserves better than this, Alara said quietly. Better than growing up surrounded by enemies and politics. He does, but he has something most royal heirs never get. A protector who genuinely cares about him as a person, not as a political asset. Kael's expression softened. That's worth more than you know. Over the following weeks, reports confirmed Kael's fears. The Blood Moon Pack was gathering a coalition, not just wolf packs, but other supernatural factions as well. Bears from the mountain territories, wildcats from the eastern ranges, even rumors of darker things stirring in the dead lands. The northern reaches prepared for war. Alara threw herself into training, working with the palace's best warriors to hone skills she'd never needed before. Her bond with Fenrir gave her enhanced strength and speed, but technique required practice. She learned to fight with blades, with claws, with calculated precision rather than desperate instinct. The warriors who'd initially dismissed her as just an Omega began to respect her dedication and rapid improvement. Fenrir trained alongside her, his abilities developing at an astounding rate. By his third month, he was the size of a full-grown wolf, able to shift between forms at will, and demonstrating control over the Silver Bloodline's power that should have taken years to develop. The bond accelerated everything, Moira explained. Guardian and protected, learning and growing together, becoming more than the sum of their parts. One evening, as Alara sparred with Liana in the training yard, Kael appeared with urgent news. The Blood Moon Coalition is moving. They'll reach our borders in 3 days. Alara and Liana stopped mid-bout, both breathing hard. How many? Liana asked. At least 1,000, possibly more. Kale's expression was grim. We have 500 warriors plus the civilian militia. We're outnumbered 2 to 1. Then we need to even the odds, Alara said. The silver power, can we use it defensively? Create barriers or protections? Theoretically, yes, but I've never seen it done. Then we'll figure it out. Alara turned to Fenrir, who'd been watching from the sidelines. Are you ready to try something new? Through the bond, she felt his eager affirmation. They spent the next 2 days experimenting, with Moira and other scholars providing research and guidance. The Silver Bloodline's power was versatile, they learned. It could heal, yes, but also shield, strengthen, and even compel obedience from lesser wolves. By the time the Blood Moon Coalition appeared on the horizon, Alara and Fenrir had developed a technique that might just save them all. The enemy army was a terrifying sight, 1,000 wolves backed by bears and wild cats, all converging on the palace with murder in their eyes. At their head rode Ragnar, the Blood Moon Alpha, his face twisted with cruel satisfaction. Kael's forces assembled on the palace walls, grim and determined despite the odds. Archers ready, Kael commanded. Warriors, hold your positions. We defend this ground with our lives, Ragnar's voice boomed across the distance. Surrender the silver air, Kael Draven, and we'll make your deaths quick. Resist, and we'll paint these walls with your blood. Kyle's response was to shift to his massive black wolf form and howl defiance. The coalition charged. Alara stood beside Fenrir at the center of the wall, both of them glowing with silver light. As the enemy army rushed forward, they released the power they'd been building. A dome of silver energy exploded outward from the palace, expanding to cover the entire defensive perimeter. The coalition's front line hit it and bounced back, stunned and confused. The barrier will hold for a few minutes, Alara called to Kyle. Make them count. Kael rallied his warriors. Archers, fire at will. Focus on the coalition's commanders. Warriors, prepare for breach. When the barrier falls, we meet them head on. Arrows rained down on the coalition forces, finding targets among the confused mass. Bears roared in pain. Wildcats shrieked. Wolves howled rage. But there were so many of them, and the barrier was already beginning to crack under sustained assault. It's not going to hold, Fenrir said through the bond, his first clear words in her mind, spoken with a maturity beyond his months. We need to do more. Like what? Trust me. Before Alara could ask what he meant, Fenrir unleashed the full might of the Silver Bloodline's compulsion. The command rippled outward from him in waves of undeniable power. Stop! Every wolf in the coalition army froze mid-attack, not by choice, but by genetic imperative coded into their very DNA. The bears and wildcats continued their assault, confused by their allies' sudden paralysis. Fenrir's voice rang out, no longer a pup's voice, but something ancient and terrible and glorious. I am Prince Fenrir, last heir of the Silver Bloodline. You came to end my life, to extinguish my legacy. But I will not die. I will not fall, and any wolf who continues this assault chooses to stand against their rightful king. The silver light blazed brighter, and Alara felt the bond straining under the enormous power flowing through it. Fenrir was pushing himself beyond his limits, beyond what should be possible. She added her own strength to his, anchoring him, supporting him, refusing to let him burn out. Together, they held the entire wolf portion of the coalition army in thrall. Ragnar fought against the compulsion with visible strain, his alpha will battling genetic imperative. This changes nothing, he forced out through gritted teeth. Kill the whelp! But his warriors couldn't move, couldn't attack, could only stand frozen while the bears and wildcats looked around in confusion, their wolf allies suddenly useless. Kael seized the opportunity. Focus fire on the bears and wildcats. Drive them back. Show them what happens when they attack the northern reaches. The palace warriors unleashed everything they had. Arrows, spears, rocks, from trebuchets, all aimed at the non-wolf elements of the coalition. The bears and wildcats, suddenly isolated and facing focused assault, began to retreat, first in ones and twos, then in a flood. Ragnar watched his coalition crumble around him, his expression twisting from rage to despair. You can't Hold us. Forever. I don't need forever, Fenrir replied. Just long enough. He released the compulsion, and the wolves staggered, freed from his control. But the damage was done. The coalition was broken. The bears and wildcats were fleeing, and the wolves faced a choice: continue a losing battle or retreat and regroup. Ragnar made the decision for them. Fall back. This isn't over, Draven. We'll return. And we'll be waiting, Kale called back. The coalition army retreated, leaving dozens of dead behind them. The Northern Reach's warriors cheered, their impossible victory sending adrenaline and triumph surging through the ranks. Alara caught Fenrir as he collapsed, the massive power drain finally overwhelming him. He shifted back to his wolf form, suddenly small and vulnerable again. You did it, Alara whispered. You saved us all. Through the bond, she felt his exhausted satisfaction. Not just me. Us. Always us. Kael approached, shifting back to human form, his expression a mixture of awe and pride. My son just commanded an army to stop attacking. At 3 months old. He's not a normal 3-month-old, Alara pointed out. No, he's something far greater. Kael reached out and gently scratched behind Fenrir's ears. He's hope, proof that the silver bloodline isn't just alive. It's powerful enough to matter. That night, the palace celebrated their victory. But Alara stood apart, watching Fenrir sleep peacefully after his enormous expenditure of power. They'd won this battle. But Ragnar's parting words echoed in her mind. This isn't over. No, it wasn't. But for the first time since finding Fenrir dying in that forest clearing, Alara felt something she'd almost forgotten. Not just hope, confidence. She'd been rejected as worthless, cast out as weak, dismissed as nothing. Now she was the guardian of a prince who could command armies. Second to an alpha king, a voice on the council that shaped kingdoms. And anyone who underestimated the Omega and the Silver Prince would learn, as the Blood Moon Coalition had learned today, that true power came in unexpected forms. The Coalition's retreat bought them time, but not peace. Over the following weeks, reports flooded in from scouts across the territories. The Blood Moon Pack was regrouping, reaching out to even more allies. And behind them, moving in shadows, were agents of the Shadow Council that Kael had warned about. Alara spent her days in a whirlwind of activity, training warriors, strategizing with the council, and helping Fenrir master the immense power he'd displayed during the battle. The pup continued to grow at an unprecedented rate, his abilities expanding daily, but growth came with complications. I can hear them, Fenrir said one morning, his voice troubled in Alara's mind. All the wolves in the kingdom, their thoughts, their emotions, it's overwhelming. They stood in the palace gardens, dawn light painting everything gold. Fenrir had shifted to human form for the first time the previous week, a boy of perhaps 12 in appearance, though only 4 months had passed since his birth. Silver hair, pale blue eyes, and his mother's delicate features combined with his father's commanding presence. The bloodline's power includes empathic bonds with other wolves, Moira had explained. As he matures, he'll learn to control it. But until then, he's drowning in other people's feelings, Alara finished now, placing a hand on Fenrir's shoulder. Can you filter them? Focus on one voice at a time. I'm trying, but there's so much fear. They're all afraid of what's coming. So am I, Alara admitted. Fear is natural. It's what we do with it that matters. Fenrir looked up at her with eyes far too old for his apparent age. You're never afraid when I can feel you through the bond. You're always certain, always strong. That's because the bond only shows you one part of me, the part that refuses to let fear control my actions. Alara smiled. But I promise you, little prince, I've been terrified every single day since I found you dying in that forest. I just choose not to let terror win. Is that what makes you different from other Omegas? The choice? The question caught Alara off guard. What do you mean? I've been reading the histories, learning about pack structures and hierarchies. Omegas are supposed to be weak, submissive, powerless. But you're none of those things. I thought maybe it was the bond that changed you, but now I think you were always this way. You just needed a reason to show it. Alara felt something tight loosen in her chest. You're right. The bond didn't make me strong. It just gave me a purpose worth being strong for. That's what I've learned these past months. Strength isn't about how hard you can hit or how loud you can roar. It's about choosing to stand up when everything tells you to stay down. Then I'll choose to stand too, Fenrir said, no matter what comes. What came arrived 3 days later, but not in the form anyone expected. A lone rider approached the palace gates at dawn, bearing a white flag of parley. The guards brought her to Kael immediately, a young woman with the Blood Moon Pact scent but wearing diplomatic colors. I bring a message from Alpha Ragnar, she announced in the throne room, surrounded by wary warriors. And from powers beyond him, the Shadow Council requests formal negotiations. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The Shadow Council, operating in secrecy for generations, was openly revealing itself. Why? Kael demanded. What's changed? Prince Fenrir's display of power changed everything. The Shadow Council believed the Silver Bloodline's abilities were exaggerated by legend. But when a 4-month-old pup commanded an entire army to freeze, the messenger's expression was almost fearful. They realized they can't simply eliminate him. He's too powerful and growing stronger every day. So they want to negotiate terms of his death instead of just killing him outright? Alara's voice dripped contempt. How generous. Not death, alliance. The messenger turned to her. The Shadow Council wants Prince Fenrir to join them, to use his power in service of their vision for the Wolf Kingdoms. In exchange, they'll call off the coalition and guarantee the Northern Reach's safety. Absolutely not, Kael said immediately. You haven't heard their offer. They're willing to make Prince Fenrir a king in his own right, ruling over territories they'll carve out specifically for him. More land than the Northern Reaches currently holds. More power than you possess, Alpha King. At what cost? Alara asked. The messenger hesitated. The Shadow Council believes in purity of bloodlines and natural hierarchy. They want Prince Fenrir to help them, restore order, eliminate corrupted elements, return the Wolf Kingdoms to the old ways. You mean they want him to become their weapon? Alara said flatly. To legitimize their genocidal ideology with the Silver Bloodline's authority. I'm simply delivering their offer, then deliver our response. Kael stood, power radiating from him. Fenrir is my son and the Silver Heir. He will not be used as a tool for the Shadow Council's twisted vision. He will not help them murder innocents in the name of purity. And if they persist in this war, I will personally tear apart every member of their organization until none remain. The messenger paled. Alpha King, they have armies. And we have Fenrir, who, as you pointed out, commanded an entire force to freeze with a single word. Tell your masters to consider that carefully before they make their next move. The messenger fled, and the throne room descended into chaos as council members debated the implications. They're going to come with everything they have, Vera predicted. Every pack they've corrupted, every warrior they've bought. This won't be a raid or a siege. This will be a war of extermination. Then we prepare for war, Kael said. Send messengers to every allied pack. Call in every favor we're owed. Fortify the palace and the surrounding territories. We have perhaps a week before they strike. We need more than preparation, Lyanna interjected. We need a strategy that accounts for overwhelming numbers. Brother, they'll have thousands. We have hundreds, even with our allies. All eyes turned to Alara and Fenrir. You want us to use the compulsion again, Alara said. Make their wolves turn on themselves. Can you do it on that scale? Alara looked at Fenrir, feeling his uncertainty through the bond. Last time had nearly destroyed him. Commanding a portion of an army for a few minutes had left him unconscious for hours. But commanding an entire invasion force? For however long the battle lasted? I don't know, Fenrir admitted aloud. The power is there, but controlling it for that long, that precisely. I might lose myself in it. Might not be able to pull back. There might be another way, Moira said slowly. The ancient texts mention the Silver Bloodline's ability to create permanent bonds of loyalty, not compulsion, but willing alliance. Wolves who choose to serve the Silver Heir gain access to a portion of his power in exchange for absolute loyalty. You're talking about creating a new pack structure, Kael said. One centered on Fenrir rather than traditional alpha hierarchy. Exactly. If enough wolves chose to bond with him, he'd have an army that couldn't be turned or corrupted, and they'd be strengthened by the shared power. But we don't have time to recruit volunteers, Liana protested. The invasion is coming in days. Then we don't recruit volunteers, Alara said, an idea forming. We offer a choice to those who already serve us. Every warrior in this palace, every guard, every scout. We ask them if they'll bond with Fenrir. Give them the truth. It will make them stronger, but it will also tie them to him permanently. Let them choose freely. And if they refuse, one council member asked, then they continue serving as they always have. No punishment, no consequences. But I think you'll be surprised by how many accept. The announcement was made that afternoon. Warriors and civilians alike gathered in the palace courtyard to hear Kael explain the proposed bond and what it would mean. This is unprecedented, Kael said, his voice carrying to every corner of the space. The silver bloodline's power shared freely with those who choose to serve. In exchange, you'll gain strength, speed, and healing abilities beyond your current capacity. But you'll also be bound to Prince Fenrir's service for life. It's not a decision to make lightly. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. I won't lie to you. War is coming. The Shadow Council wants my son dead or enslaved. They've assembled armies from across the territories. We're outnumbered, outmatched, and fighting for survival. This bond is our best chance at evening the odds. But I will not command anyone to accept it. The choice must be yours, made freely and without coercion. Silence fell over the courtyard. Alara held her breath, wondering if anyone would step forward. Then a young warrior raised her hand. I'll bond with the prince. As will I, another voice called. And I. Yes, I choose the bond. Within minutes, nearly every warrior in the palace had volunteered. Civilians too, scouts, craftsmen, healers, servants. They came forward in waves, eager to link themselves to the Silver Prince. Fenrir stared at them in astonishment. Why? Why would you all choose this? An older warrior, a grizzled veteran with scars covering his arms, spoke up. Because you commanded an army to stop attacking, and you did it to protect us. Because your guardian took poison meant for you and nearly died. Because you represent something better than the fear and hatred the Shadow Council offers. We choose hope, young prince. We choose you. The bonding ritual took hours. One by one, wolves knelt before Fenrir and offered their loyalty. He accepted each with growing confidence, the bonds forming like threads of silver light connecting him to hundreds of individuals. Alara felt each connection through her guardian bond with Fenrir. It was extraordinary. A network of wolves, all linked to the Silver Prince, all sharing his power and purpose. By nightfall, Fenrir commanded an army of 300 bonded warriors, not enough to match the thousands the Shadow Council would bring, but strong enough to make them hesitate. The invasion came 6 days later, just as predicted. The Shadow Council's forces were massive, thousands of wolves backed by bears, wildcats, and darker things that should have remained in nightmare. They surrounded the palace in a ring of steel and fang, their numbers blotting out the landscape. At their head stood not Ragnar, but someone new. A figure in black robes, face hidden by a hood, radiating power that made even Kael tense. I am voice of the Shadow Council, the figure announced, their voice carrying with unnatural clarity. We come with final terms. Surrender Prince Fenrir to our custody, and the northern reaches will be spared. Refuse, and every wolf in this palace dies. You have 1 hour to decide. Kael stood on the wall, Alara and Fenrir at his sides, looking down at the assembled host. The odds were impossible. Even with the bonded warriors, they were outnumbered 10 to 1. What do we do? Liana whispered, joining them. We fight, Kael said simply. We've made our choice. Now we live or die by it. There might be another option, Fenrir said quietly. His apparent age had increased again, now a young man of perhaps 16, silver hair flowing past his shoulders. I've been practicing something, a technique Moira and I developed from the ancient texts. What kind of technique? Alara asked, though she already felt the shape of it through their bond. Complete bonding, not just with our warriors, but with everyone willing, every wolf in the northern reaches who chooses to stand with me, all at once, linked through the silver bloodline's power. That's insane, Liana breathed. The strain would be incredible, yes. But with Alara anchoring me, with Father adding his strength, Fenrir met Kael's eyes. We could create something unprecedented, a true pack, bound not by territory or alpha dominance, but by choice and shared power. But you'd burn out, Kael protested. The power required to bond with thousands simultaneously is less than you think, because they'd be choosing it, accepting the bond willingly. I wouldn't be forcing anything, just opening the door and letting them walk through. Elara felt the truth of his words through their connection. It could work. It would be dangerous, potentially fatal, but it could work. How would we even communicate the offer? Vera asked, having joined them on the wall. We can't exactly gather everyone in the kingdom to a courtyard speech. The existing bonds, Fenrir said. I can speak through them to our 300 warriors. They can spread the word to others. It will cascade outward, warrior to civilian, civilian to family, family to friends. Within hours, every wolf in the northern reaches will know what we're offering. And the Shadow Council's army? Liana asked. You're going to offer them the bond too. Fenrir's smile was sharp. Why not? The Shadow Council claims to represent all wolves. Let's test that claim. Let's see how many of their soldiers choose freely to serve them when offered an alternative. It was brilliant and insane in equal measure. Elara felt pride surge through the bond. Do it, Kael decided. Send the offer. Let every wolf choose their own path. Fenrir closed his eyes and reached through the bonds to his 300 warriors. Elara felt the message propagate outward like ripples in water. The Silver Bloodline offers you a choice. Bond with Prince Fenrir and gain strength, healing, and purpose beyond what any alpha can provide. Or remain as you are. No coercion, no punishment, just choice. Decide freely. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Wolves throughout the palace, throughout the cities surrounding it, throughout the northern reaches itself, they accepted. Thousands of threads of silver light connected to Fenrir in a cascade of willing bonds. But more remarkably, lights began appearing in the Shadow Council's army. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Warriors who'd been conscripted or threatened into service now offered a genuine alternative. They chose the Silver Prince over their supposed masters. The voice of the Shadow Council watched in horror as their army began to fracture. What is this? What are you doing? Offering choice, Fenrir said, his voice carrying across the battlefield with the silver power amplifying it. You claim to represent the natural order, to speak for all wolves, but you rule through fear and force. I offer something you never could, genuine loyalty freely given. More and more of the Shadow Council's warriors accepted the bond. The silver threads multiplied until they formed a network spanning the entire battlefield. Stop this! The voice's roar was desperate now. Warriors, hold your positions. Anyone who betrays the Shadow Council will what? Fenrir interrupted. Face your wrath? I think not. Because you no longer command them. They've chosen a different path. The voice threw back their hood, revealing a woman with cold eyes and features twisted by dark magic. You think you've won? You think this changes anything? We are thousands of years old. We've outlasted empires. We will outlast you. Perhaps, Fenrir acknowledged, but not today. He released the full power of the collective bond. Silver light exploded across the battlefield, connecting every bonded wolf in a network of shared strength. 300 became 3,000. 3,000 became tens of thousands as more and more of the Shadow Council's conscripts chose freedom over fear. The voice tried to counter with dark magic, shadows rising to combat the light. But silver proved stronger, pure, unyielding. The darkness shattered. The voice screamed as the backlash of her own power consumed her, and the Shadow Council's army simply dissolved. Warriors who'd been forced to serve now walked away freely. Bears and wildcats, seeing their wolf allies defecting en masse, retreated without a fight. Within an hour, the battlefield was empty except for the bonded warriors, now numbering in the thousands, standing in loose formation around the palace. Fenrir collapsed, and Elara caught him before he hit the ground. But he was conscious, just exhausted, and through the bond she felt his triumph. We did it, he breathed. We actually did it. You did it, Elara corrected. You gave them all a choice, and they chose you. That's not something the Shadow Council could ever understand. Kael approached, his expression a mixture of awe and paternal pride. My son just ended a war before it started, by offering freedom instead of demanding obedience. The Shadow Council still exists, Fenrir pointed out. The voice was just one member. They'll regroup, try again. Let them try, Kael said. They'll find a very different situation than they expect. You've created something unprecedented, Fenrir. A pack structure based on choice rather than dominance. It will change everything. The following weeks proved Kael right. Word of the bonding spread across the territories. Wolves from distant packs, hearing of the Silver Prince who offered shared power and genuine choice, began making the journey to the northern reaches. The council struggled to accommodate the influx. Territory lines had to be redrawn, resources reallocated. Entire sections of the palace converted to housing for the newly bonded. But through it all, Fenrir remained centered. He spent hours each day maintaining the bonds, speaking with individual wolves, learning their stories and concerns. He was becoming exactly what the Silver Bloodline had always represented, a leader who served rather than ruled, who strengthened rather than controlled. Alara watched his transformation with pride and a touch of melancholy. He was growing up so fast, becoming someone remarkable. Soon he wouldn't need a guardian anymore. That's not true, Fenrir said one evening, proving he'd sensed her thoughts through the bond. They sat in the gardens where they'd had so many conversations, watching sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. You're nearly independent now, Alara said. You command thousands. You make decisions that affect entire territories. What do you need me for? Everything. Fenrir took her hand, his expression serious. The bond between us isn't just about protection, Alara. It's about partnership. You anchor me when the power becomes overwhelming. You remind me of what matters when politics tries to corrupt my purpose. You're not just my guardian, you're my conscience, my counsel, my family. Tears stung Alara's eyes. I was rejected as worthless, cast out as weak. I had nothing and no one. And then I found you. No, Fenrir corrected gently. I found you. You were exactly where you needed to be when I needed you most. That's not chance. That's fate. I don't believe in fate. Then believe in this. Fenrir gestured to the palace, to the territories beyond, to the thousands of bonded wolves building a new kind of pack. None of this happens without you. The Omega who chose compassion over convenience, who saved a dying pup when everyone else would have walked away, who stood up to Alpha Kings and Shadow Councils and armies. You changed the world, Alara, and you did it by refusing to accept what they told you about your worth. Alara pulled him into a fierce embrace, this boy prince who'd grown so wise so quickly. We changed it together. Always together, Fenrir agreed. The formal recognition came 2 months later. The council, now expanded to include representatives from the bonded packs, gathered for a historic session. Kael stood before them, resplendent in ceremonial robes with Fenrir at his right hand and Alara at his left. We gather today to acknowledge a truth that can no longer be denied, Kael announced. The Silver Bloodline has returned. Prince Fenrir has proven himself not just powerful, but wise. Not just a warrior, but a leader. And the bond he's created has united wolves across territories in ways we've never seen. He turned to Fenrir. The northern reaches has been my kingdom. But it's clear now that something larger is emerging. Something that requires fresh vision and new leadership. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Alara tensed, uncertain where this was going. Therefore, Kael continued, I propose we establish a new structure. Prince Fenrir becomes High King of the Northern Territories, ruling over all bonded packs. I retain leadership of my original pack but acknowledge his ultimate authority, and Guardian Alara Voss, he turned to her, his expression warm, is recognized as Queen Regent, serving as Fenrir's co-ruler until he comes of age. Her wisdom, courage, and unwavering dedication have earned her a place of honor beyond what any Omega has ever achieved. She is no longer just a guardian. She is a sovereign in her own right. The chamber erupted, some in celebration, some in shock, but the vote was overwhelming when it came. Prince Fenrir was crowned High King of the Northern Territories, and Alara Voss, rejected Omega of Iron Ridge, became Queen Regent. The coronation ceremony was magnificent. Wolves from every bonded pack gathered to witness history. Fenrir received the silver crown of his ancestors, recovered from the ruined palace vaults, and restored to gleaming glory. And Alara received a crown forged specifically for her, wrought from silver and steel, representing both the bloodline's power and her own hard-won strength. As they stood before the assembled thousands, crowns gleaming in the sunlight, Alara felt the weight of how far they'd come. She thought of the night Marcus had rejected her, the moment she'd walked into the wilderness alone, the dying pup she'd found and refused to abandon, every choice that had led to this moment. "Any regrets?" Fenrir asked through the bond. Alara looked at him, this remarkable young king who'd changed her life as much as she'd changed his. Then she looked out at the crowd, at the faces of wolves who'd chosen hope over fear, freedom over coercion. "Not one," she said aloud. The celebration lasted 3 days. Music, feasting, tournaments, showcasing the bonded warriors' enhanced abilities. It was joyous and chaotic and perfect. On the final evening, as things were winding down, a familiar figure appeared at the palace gates. Marcus Thorne, alpha heir of Iron Ridge, requesting an audience. Alara's first instinct was to refuse. But curiosity won out. She agreed to see him in one of the palace's private meeting rooms, with guards stationed outside. Marcus entered looking older than she remembered, worn down by something she couldn't quite identify. He stopped when he saw her, taking in her regal bearing, her crown, the confidence radiating from every line of her body. "Alara," he said quietly. "Or should I say, Your Majesty?" "Alara is fine. Oh, we're past formalities, I think." She gestured to a chair. "Why are you here, Marcus?" He sat, looking uncomfortable. "I came to... I'm not sure. Apologize? Explain? Beg forgiveness? For which part? Rejecting me? Having me cast out? Letting everyone believe I was deficient? All of it." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she remembered from when they'd been together. "I made the worst decision of my life that night. I was pressured by my father, by the pack elders, by everyone who said an Omega couldn't be a proper Alpha's mate, and I was too weak to stand up to them." "You were cruel," Alara said flatly. "You humiliated me in front of the entire pack. You could have rejected me privately with dignity. Instead, you made it a spectacle." I know, and I'm sorry. I've been sorry every day since." "Why?" Alara leaned forward. "What changed? You got what you wanted, a strong mate, powerful heirs on the way, your father's approval. Why do you care what one rejected Omega thinks?" "Because I see what you've become." Marcus's voice cracked. "Queen Regent to the High King, guardian of the Silver Bloodline. You command armies, Alara. You changed the political structure of the entire Northern Territories. You're everything I told you that you could never be. Because you were wrong about what I could be. About what any Omega could be, given the chance." "I was. And it cost me..." Marcus stopped, visibly struggling with emotion. "My new mate is strong, dominant, perfect on paper. But she's not you. She doesn't challenge me, doesn't inspire me, doesn't make me want to be better. And I realized too late that strength isn't just about how hard you can fight. You tried to tell me that, and I didn't listen." Alara felt a distant echo of the pain his rejection had caused, but it was muted now, overlaid with everything she'd experienced since. "I don't hate you, Marcus," she said finally. "I did for a while. But honestly, you did me a favor. If you hadn't rejected me, I would never have found Fenrir, never discovered my own strength, never become who I was always meant to be. Does that mean you forgive me? It means I've moved past you. Your opinion of my worth doesn't define me anymore. It never should have." Alara stood, signaling the meeting's end. "Go back to Iron Ridge, Marcus. Be good to your mate and your pack. Learn from your mistakes. But don't come here seeking absolution I can't give. I'm not your redemption. I'm not your second chance. I'm my own person, living my own life." Marcus stood as well, his expression a mixture of grief and resignation. "For what it's worth, I think you're going to be an extraordinary queen." "I already am." After he left, Fenrir appeared in the doorway. "I felt your emotions spike through the bond. Are you all right?" "More than all right," Alara smiled. "I just realized something important. I spent so long trying to prove I was worthy of Iron Ridge's acceptance. trying to be strong enough, good enough, perfect enough. But I was looking for validation in the wrong place. Where should you have been looking? In the mirror. Elara touched her crown. My worth was never about what they thought of me. It was about what I thought of myself. And it took losing everything to figure that out. You didn't lose everything, Fenrir pointed out. You chose to walk away. There's a difference. You're right. I chose survival over humiliation, chose dignity over acceptance, chose myself. And saved a prince in the process. No. Elara pulled him into a hug. I saved a pup. The prince saved himself by being brave enough to bond with an Omega when everyone said the silver bloodline deserved better. I got exactly what I deserved, Fenrir said firmly. The best guardian, best friend, and best co-ruler I could possibly have. They stood there in comfortable silence, the bond between them humming with contentment. Outside, the celebration continued. Wolves from a dozen territories mingling, bonded through choice rather than conquest. A new kind of pack, building a new kind of kingdom, and at its heart stood an Omega who'd been rejected as worthless and a prince who'd been marked for death. Together, they defied every expectation, broken every rule, and reshaped their world. Elara thought back to that night in the wilderness, holding a dying silver pup and making the choice to save him despite all logic saying she should walk away. She'd thought she was choosing compassion. She'd actually been choosing her destiny. The years that followed brought challenges, of course. The Shadow Council's remnants continued plotting. Other territories tested the new power structure. Politics remained complicated and occasionally treacherous. But through it all, Elara and Fenrir stood together. The Guardian and the King, the Omega and the Prince, partners in every sense that mattered. They established laws protecting Omega rights throughout the bonded territories, created schools teaching that strength came in many forms, proved that hierarchy based on choice and mutual respect worked better than dominance and fear. And slowly, gradually, other territories began to take notice, to question their own rigid structures, to wonder if perhaps the rejected Omega and the Silver Prince had discovered something worth emulating. 10 years after that night in the forest, Elara stood on the palace balcony overlooking the city below. It had grown exponentially, thousands of wolves making it their home. The northern territories were thriving, prosperous, and peaceful in ways they'd never been. Fenrir joined her, now fully grown into his power and position, still young but wise beyond his years, still learning but confident in his purpose. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I died that day? He asked. If you'd walked past without stopping. Sometimes, Elara admitted, but I don't dwell on it. We can't live in the realm of what-ifs. True. I prefer our reality, Fenrir gestured to the city. All of this exists because you chose compassion when cruelty would have been easier. And because you chose to trust an Omega when everyone told you not to. We chose each other, Fenrir corrected. The bond works both ways. Elara smiled, feeling the truth of it through their connection. They had chosen each other. Guardian and Prince, Queen and King, family. She'd started her journey as Elara Voss, worthless Omega of Iron Ridge. She'd become Queen Regent of the Northern Territories, co-ruler with the High King, and living proof that power came in unexpected forms. But most importantly, she'd become herself. Fully, completely, unapologetically herself. And that, Elara thought, as silver light from their bond painted the twilight in shades of hope and promise, was the greatest victory of all. The rejected Omega had become a queen, not through conquest or manipulation or political maneuvering, but through the simple, radical act of choosing to save a dying pup. And in saving him, she'd saved herself.